Full Metal Storm, Battle of the Machines. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 520 Hunting. After releasing the transformation into a dragon posture, Luo Yan walked out of the quiet room and came to a tea room. He asked someone to find Wenzhao, as he had something to tell the fake Taoist priest. After Luo Yan drank a few sips of tea, Wenzhao came. The fake Taoist priest's face was still pale, as if he was greatly frightened, and even his pupils were slightly dilated. When he saw Luo Yan, his heart tightened, thinking of the terrible aura just now. Wenzhao couldn't help but think in his heart, could it be that the aura just now was released by this gentleman? It's too scary. What kind of skills did he practice to have such a terrifying aura and meaning? It's just like an evil ghost. Thinking of this, Wenzhao tried to make his expression more respectful. He said carefully, "Master, you're looking for me?" Luo Yan glanced at him and said, "I will be away from Guangling for a while tomorrow, at most 1 month, at least 2 weeks. While I'm away, don't have any conflicts with Wanziton. Be low-key. You can even make it look like we're afraid of them. We'll talk about the rest when I come back." Wenzhao quickly wrote it down. Luo Yan added, "Also, you will personally take Yang Tao to the surface tomorrow. Yang Hao and the others should be heading to the coyote base. You hand Yang Tao over to him. At the same time, warn Yang Hao to keep his people under control and not to clash with Li Yu." Wenzhao quickly said, "Okay, sir." The fake Taoist priest added, "When do you plan to deal with Yu Bei at the Yinwen base?" Pingyao. Luo Yan remembered the letter that Xing had placed in his hand and said, "I'll talk about it after I come back and deal with the matter of Wanzitang and the expansion of the coyote base. Have you contacted Dark Blood?" Wenzhao smiled and said, "I contacted them a long time ago. Dark Blood heard that you wanted a mecha. Not only did they agree, they also gave us a lot of discounts. According to your instructions, I asked them to send 2 to the coyote camp. At the same time, Dark Blood promised to give us a maintenance team. Of course, we have to pay for that team." Luo Yan nodded. "After I take over Liu Zio's industry in Pingyao Underground City, I will bring someone back. By then, we won't be short of mecha engineers." Wenzhao didn't ask who it was. He nodded repeatedly. Luo Yan stood up and said, "Also, please notify Captain Yukiashu for me. Just tell her that I will find time to meet her in Qingyang City. By the way, tell her that you can stay in Team 7 and she won't go back to Team 1. After saying that, Luo Yan glanced at the fake Taoist priest. Wenzhao's heart trembled and he quickly smiled and said, "This is the best. This is the best." After sending Luo Yan away, Wenzhao covered his chest and said, "I was scared to death. This gentleman didn't forget to test me before leaving. He dared to ask Captain Yu for people directly, which shows that he has confidence in himself." That's right, it's been less than a year. At least half of Guangling's underground world has gone into his pocket, and Captain Yu's Team 1 is just like that. Maybe in the future, this gentleman will become a department head. Hey, I have to hold on to this thigh tightly. The next day, Luo Yan brought Dragon Elephant and met Yang Lekei at the school gate. Today they are leaving for Qingyang City to discuss the forbidden cultivation garden. Yang Lekei prepared a car to take him and Luo Yan to the outside of the underground city. When they reached the surface, they changed to an off-road vehicle. Young Master Yang naturally had more than one car when he traveled. 3 off-road vehicles equipped with anti-aircraft machine guns and an armored vehicle for rest at night. 4 vehicles formed a small convoy, driving in the barren wilderness. The weather is getting warmer, and next month is Qingming Festival. Now the winter snow on the surface has melted, and new green has emerged from the withered grass. New buds have quietly emerged on the bare branches. The wind blew from the wilderness, bringing the freshness of the grass and trees. This is a breath that can never be smelled in the underground city. Yang Lekei closed his eyes, stood up, opened his arms, and enjoyed the good time of gentle breeze and beautiful sun. It's still more comfortable on the surface. Although the underground city has tried its best to make everyone live comfortably, it's still underground. Many things are still different from the surface. If you stay in the underground city for a long time, you will be depressed. Luo Yan glanced at him, but he didn't think this guy would be depressed. He has a father who is the director of the construction bureau, he is not short of money, and he has no pursuit of cultivation or driving mecha. He looks like he is just eating and waiting to die. If such a person can still be depressed, it's simply complaining without reason. By the way, Luo Yan. Yang Lixi sat down. I heard that you have already embraced Uncle Fang's thigh. Luo Yan said HMM. He looked around, guarding against the giant parasites that suddenly appeared from nowhere to attack the convoy. He didn't have the same enjoyment as Yang Lixi. For him, the surface is synonymous with danger. All the beauty is an illusion. Hidden under these beautiful scenes are cruel and deadly things. Yang Lixi had long been accustomed to Luo Yan's cold attitude and said to himself, you better hold tight. My dad said that Uncle Fang was a great man in the past. My dad wanted Uncle Fang to teach me before, but Uncle Fang touched my hand and said that my hands were not suitable for holding a knife. And then there was nothing else. Last time when the security department was looking for trouble with us, Uncle Fang touched your hand, and I thought you had a chance to be chosen by him. Haha, the facts prove that I was right. My damn prediction was too accurate, even I was scared. Hearing him bragging on the side, Luo Yang couldn't help but say, then do you think you and Liu Ruohan have a chance? Yang Lixi was speechless. Then he looked at Luo Yan with resentment. If you don't mention this, we will still be friends. Luo Yan's mouth corners rarely rose slightly. Not long after they left the underground city, several cars drove out of the underground city. The car drove out of the underground city for 100 kilometers before stopping. Then the car door opened. Gao Yanghua, Ajiu and others got out of the car. After jumping onto the grass, Jiuying stretched his body and looked at Yanghua. I didn't expect that guy to leave the academy and run to the surface. He is simply courting death. We got nothing out of it. Right, brother Hua. Gao Yanghua smoked a cigarette. It's easier to do it on the surface, and we can also use our manpower. It's not like in the underground city, where we are tied up. While the two were talking, off-road vehicles drove out from the woods in the distance. There were also some riders on motorcycles. Gao Yanghua threw the cigarette under his feet, stepped on it a few times, and said, let's go. Jiuying waved to the people behind him. Let's go, hunting. They joined the convoy that appeared in the woods, and then the convoy raised dust and roared into the wilderness, chasing Luo Yan and others. Chapter 521 Night Murder. Night fell. In an abandoned town, Luo Yan took the hot soup handed over by Yang Lixi. Although it was instant food and exuded the smell of artificial flavors, this kind of food was convenient and quick, and it was not difficult to swallow during the wilderness march. It was better than battlefield food, and Luo Yan didn't pursue the taste of food too much. As long as it could provide calories and nutrition, he could eat it. Obviously, this bowl of hot soup was much better than those bland battlefield foods, and it could also provide a variety of human needs including protein. Luo Yang blew a breath, sucked lightly, and swallowed slowly. Then he took a piece of bread, soaked it in the soup, and put it in his mouth, letting the moist bread fill his mouth. Yang Lixi sat next to him and said, when the underground transportation network is built, we won't have to go to the surface to venture to other dungeons in the future. Luo Yan thought of the huge construction site in the dungeon and nodded. After eating in a few mouthfuls, he walked to the window covered with a thick sunshade. Several layers of black sunshade cloth prevented the light from leaking out, so as not to expose his whereabouts or attract the attention of the giant parasite. Luo Yan leaned against the window, opened a small corner, and looked outside. Night fell outside, and the abandoned town was almost pitch black. The sky was covered with thick clouds tonight, and no light could be seen in the town. There was a dead silence everywhere, no animal calls or insect sounds, as quiet as a cemetery. Luo Yan looked for a while. Then he stepped back. Go to bed early. Yang Lixi nodded in agreement. The two spent the night in the armored vehicle, so that if something happened in the middle of the night, they could just drive away. Luo Yan did not take off his clothes. He slept in his clothes. He held the dragon elephant and maintained a posture that could move at any time. He did not let himself fall into a deep sleep completely. sleeping too deeply on the surface, is playing with his life. Yang Lixi, on the other hand, remained alert at first. But after 2 hours, he could already hear the sound of even breathing. Obviously, he had fallen asleep. There was nothing he could do about it. Although Yang Lixi wanted to imitate Luo Yan, he had no experience of living on the surface. He had no painful experiences. So some habits were hard to change. In this way, time passed slowly. It was 4 or 5 o'clock before dawn. Luo Yan also slept more deeply. At this time, a strange whistle suddenly sounded in the dark town. Luo Yan's ears twitched slightly. Suddenly, he opened his eyes in the dark. He made a judgment in an instant. Attack. And the other party used weapons similar to rocket launchers. He himself had used them against the enemy. Now some people greeted them in the same way. Without thinking about the identity of the enemy, Luo Yan had already jumped up. Get up. He shouted loudly and started the dragon transformation posture at the same time. Red scales immediately stood up all over his body and then covered his whole body. The whites of his eyes were dyed black, and the red eyes emitted a terrifying red light, illuminating the darkness. A dark curved horn appeared slightly on his forehead. At this moment, Luo Yan was no longer a human. Then, a huge explosion sounded outside the car, and the armored vehicle immediately shook violently. The body of the car began to spin wildly. Luo Yan hugged the dragon elephant tightly, allowing his body to keep bumping against the debris in the car. The physique tempered by watching the mountains and seas and the powerful body of transforming into a dragon made him unscathed in this tumbling. When it stopped, Yang Lixi covered his head with a bump and climbed up, and was about to look at Luo Yan. Luo Yan suddenly stretched out his hand, pressed Yang Lixi's head, and made him stick to the car body with his back to him. To avoid seeing his current appearance, Yang Lixi didn't understand, but felt the terrifying power in Luo Yan's hand. This power was believed to be able to easily crush his head. Then he heard Luo Yan say, "You hide, I will lead the enemy away." Yang Lixi's blood rushed up. "I will go too. You can't die. And don't make it more difficult for me." After speaking, Luo Yan pushed Yang Lixi into a pile of debris. Before Yang Lixi could climb out, Luo Yan drew his heavy sword and cut the car body open, then crashed out. He rolled on the ground and jumped up. There was a raging fire nearby, and Yang Lixi's off-road vehicles were basically scrapped. There was a cry of grief at the scene, and it was unknown how many guards were killed or injured. Luo Yan quickly formed a seal. The light from all around gathered and turned into a light armor on his body. This is an upgraded version of the number 9 mystical art iron armor, the number 27 mystical art golden armor. In addition to having the same effect as iron armor, it also further strengthens defense. It can also resist toxins and spiritual influences. This is a kind of mystical art that Luo Yan just learned after being promoted to the advanced realm. And because of practicing the Yan Yang Sutra, Luo Yan's golden armor showed a faint red glow. He quickly picked up a car door that was blown off the ground, lifted it up, and protected one side. Then he ran out of the town. Above Luo Yan's head, in the dark night, a drone followed him closely. In the darkness in the distance, a screen was lit up, and on it, Luo Yan could be seen running out of the town using the car door as a shield. It's him. It's that Luo kid, Brother Hua. The light on the screen illuminated Ajiu's face. Behind Ajiu, Bao Yang Hua walked out of the darkness and threw the cigarette in his mouth. Aching, Xiao Zhang, attack the moving target. Leo Xiao, get your sniper rifle ready. After knocking down that kid's shield, it's up to you. Bao Yang Hua said, while pressing the micro communication device in his ear. Then he gestured to Ajiu, let's catch up. Ajiu looked at the convoy burning in the distance. Brother Hua, what about them? Those people are not important. Bao Yang Hua had already straddled a motorcycle and turned the throttle. The motorcycle's engine roared. He rushed out. Ajiu immediately picked up a rocket launcher and jumped onto a motorcycle. There was already a rider on the motorcycle. He immediately caught up with Bao Yang Hua. In the town. Bang 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 bang. Intensive gunfire rang out. The car door that Luo Yan carried on his body as a shield was blown up like a hornet's nest. After running for a while, he made a prompt decision, threw the car door away, and sped up. He was about to run out of the town. At this moment, he felt something in his heart. He suddenly raised his right hand to protect his head. Bang! His right hand shook violently and bounced up. The golden armor on his body suddenly glowed red and then broke into pieces. Luo Yan turned around, then adjusted his posture and continued to run. That was the power of the sniper equipment just now. It was definitely the golden armor plus the dragon transformation form. This shot might have knocked off Luo Yan's arm. In the distance, on the rooftop of a building in the town, a man raised his head and rubbed his eyes. Did I see it wrong? That kid took my sniper shot. He can still run. This is really hell. PS. There are repeated chapter numbers or no chapter numbers recently. Please don't panic. The author's backend is going crazy during this period. Just wait for the technical correction. Chapter 522 Breakout. Brother Hua. That guy ran away. Old Zao's sniper didn't stop him. Motorcycles shuttled through the abandoned town, and RJIU shouted from behind. Jiuying Hua had a gloomy face and pressed the macro communication machine and said, "Don't let him get out. Xiaoding, stop him for me." At the same time, on the other side of the town, Luo Yan was running when he suddenly saw the lights on at the intersection in front. Then a long trailer turned a corner on the road and dropped a huge container on the car. Those boxes immediately blocked the road in all directions. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. Not only did he not stop, instead, he ran faster. When he was about to approach the first container, he put his hands in front of his face. Then he crashed into it directly. Bang, bang. With two loud noises, a hole was pierced through the container. Looking out from this hole, Luo Yan broke through another container in front. In the cab of the long trailer, a man stuck his head out of the window and looked back. Seeing Luo Yan smashing through one container after another, he was not affected by any obstacles. He was already far away. The driver hurriedly reported, "Brother Hua, the guy smashed through the container and ran out of town. On the motorcycle." Jiuying Hua snorted when he heard the news. Then he shouted, "Old Han, it's time for your team to go out. Catch him." "Got it, Brother Hua." In a blink of an eye, Luo Yan smashed through one container after another and ran out of town. At this time, the sound of locomotive engines sounded in the wilderness on both sides of the road outside the town. Then 8 motorcycles drove over from the wilderness on both sides of the road. The riders on the motorcycles shouted and yelled. They soon caught up with Luo Yan. Then claws shot out from the front of the motorcycle, and these things quickly grabbed Luo Yan's arms and shoulders. The claws tightened immediately, but could not pierce the dragon scales. Luo Yan suddenly stopped, then took both hands, and grabbed all 7 or 8 ropes in his hands. Then the man started to spin, pulling the 8 motorcycles behind him, spinning the motorcycles, and throwing all the knights off. The knights screamed, and fell to the ground, rolling on the ground. They hit rocks and trees on the ground, and they spit blood, and groaned in their helmets. A knight took off his helmet, and wiped the blood from his mouth. Suddenly, he heard the sound of wind above his head. He couldn't help but look up. He saw 7 or 8 mechs falling from the sky above. His helmet fell to the ground, and the shield reflected the scene of several motorcycles falling from the sky. Then there were screams, and there was a splash of blood from nowhere. It fell on the helmet, dyeing it red instantly. Exclamation mark. Snap. Luo Yan threw a claw hook to the ground. After clearing the claw hooks on his body, he heard the sound of a car behind him. Several more motorcycles chased after him. The knight on the front one was Jiuying Hua. He saw his team of knights being killed in the distance, snorted, and made a gesture. Aju behind him screamed, picked up the rocket launcher, locked on Luo Yan, and fired the shell. A sharp whistle sounded. Luo Yan saw a black spot with flames spraying from behind, crossing the road, and rushing towards him. The dragon elephant immediately raised up, and slashed from a distance. The sword edge burst out a blurry faint red light, and high temperature ripples. Sword key. This sword key hit the shell. Boom. A flame exploded on the road. The shock wave spread, and blew Luo Yan's hair. Under the fire, Luo Yan's body was covered with red scales, emitting amber light that was difficult to detect with the naked eye. A black curved horn stretched out from his forehead, and 2 red suns appeared in his dark eye sockets. So when Jiuying Hua drove the motorcycle through the flames, and saw Luo Yan like this, he was really scared. Is this still a human? The motorcycle tire fell to the ground, and our Yang Hua passed by Luo Yan in an instant. Then he turned around and drove back. Together with Agu and others behind him, they surrounded Luo Yan. Luo Yan held the dragon elephant and looked at these people expressionlessly. He silently opened the Wu Wang burning eyes and read the information of these people. Gao Yang Hua, 32 years old, a Zhang level backbone of the Huanquan organization. Realm, Advanced Level 3. Chen Jiu, 26 years old, a black rope elite of the Huanquan organization. Realm, Intermediate Level 2. Luo Yan was a little surprised that he was actually a member of the Huanquan organization. He then read Dao Yang Hua's thoughts. At this time, Dao Yang Hua also looked at Luo Yan. Is this the student who killed Luo Xianai's youngest son? Luo Xianai, that old guy, didn't tell me that this Luo was a monster. Damn, did that old thing do it on purpose? Amidst all the distracting thoughts, these thoughts have already fallen into Luo Yan's eyes. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly. Luo Xianai. The Luo family has a relationship with Huanquan? No wonder the team leader said before that the Luo family has another backer. It seems that Huanquan is not going away. Luo Xianai ordered the people of Huanquan to kill him. Did he find out that I'm a red ghost? No. It should be impossible. Otherwise, Luo Xianai would not use Luo Beacon as an excuse to let Huanquan take action. And from Mao Yang Hua's voice, they should have just come into contact with Luo Xianai, so they are full of distrust. This point, maybe it can be used. Thinking of this, Luo Yan activated the secret method Blood Pagoda. Immediately, a ball of red light spread out from his body and spread rapidly, causing a blood pool to rise from the ground. Luo Yan, who was in the dragon transformation form, was originally full of murderous aura. Now that the blood pagoda was opened, the violent and murderous aura was like a huge wave, impacting the hearts of everyone at the scene. Gao Yang Hua's eyes widened, and he felt as if he was standing in front of a tsunami, and he would be submerged by the huge waves at any time, and his body would be gone. If he was like this, one can imagine how much shock Jiu and his men must have received. At this time, Dao Yang Hua heard the inhuman student in front of him whisper, "Did Luo Xianai send you here?" Gao Yang Hua certainly couldn't admit it, so he said, "What Luo Xianai? I don't even know him." When he said this, in the field of vision of the Wu Wang blazing eyes, Luo Yan saw a red spot of light appear on Dao Yang Hua's body. It was like the other party was marked after using the illusion and was discovered. He had seen this phenomenon last time. It seems that with the continuous use of the Wu Wang blazing eyes, the concept of illusion is no longer limited to illusion. Even if the other party says something against their will, it will be regarded as illusion. When you discover it, you will mark it. Luo Yan immediately mobilized the red light in his field of vision, let them inject the mark, and then detonate. The next moment, a crimson illusory flame suddenly spurted out from Mao Yang Hua's shoulder. Although the flame was illusory, the damage was real. Gao Yang Hua's clothes were immediately burned to ashes, and his shoulders were sizzling. He screamed and burst out his energy to suppress it. At this time, Luo Yan had already taken the opportunity to rush forward, and the dragon-like elephant swept up the strong wind and chopped at Gao Yang Hua's head. Chapter 523, Borrowing a Knife to Kill. Gao Yang Hua quickly formed a seal and released a tornado. The strong wind rushed into the sky and hit Luo Yan's dragon elephant. The heavy sword condensed slightly in mid-air. Gao Yang Hua took the opportunity to withdraw. The dragon elephant then shattered the strong wind and slashed the ground, creating a gully. Gao Yang Hua's face changed and he shouted, "Agu, you guys go. You are no match for him." Luo Yan chuckled, "I'll just pretend I don't know that this is your feint to the east and attack in the west strategy." He turned around, and the dragon elephant slashed at the man called Adeo through the air. A blurry red high temperature ripple was slashed out. Sword key. Ag roared, and his yuan li burst out, trying his best to resist the sword key. Bang! The sword key burst out, and Ag flew out, spitting out 3 mouthfuls of hot blood in his heart. But he finally blocked the sword key. But at this time, the blood pool below him rumbled, and the blood wave spurted out, turning into a blood blade chasing after him. When the blood blade came to the middle, it was affected by the dragon transformation form. With a whoosh, it spread out and condensed into a lizard dragon with bared fangs and claws. The blood-colored beast pounced down, and the illusory blood immediately submerged Jiuying. After enduring the impact of the lizard dragon and the blood, when Jiuying fell to the ground, his body was twisted, and there was not a single piece of good meat on his body, as if he had been bitten by a group of wild beasts. He died on the spot. Seeing this scene, the others screamed and turned around and ran. At this time, the dragon elephant swept horizontally, sweeping out a sword energy, and cut all those people in half. Exclamation mark. Jiuying, whose facial muscles twitched. Is this really a high-level cultivator? Although shocked, Jiuying Hua was not slow in his hands and feet. While Luo Yan was attacking others, he bought time. I don't know if he used some secret method or mysterious art. At this time, a big black tree rose in front of Jiuying Hua. This black tree was extremely strange, with human heads hanging on the branches, and human legs growing on the front of the trunk and the roots. It exudes an extremely strange aura, protecting Jiuying Hua behind it. Luo Yan looked up at the black demon tree, then smiled. Are you confused as to why Luo Xianai didn't warn you that I'm not that easy to deal with? It's actually very simple. Because Luo Xianai and I are allies. He asked you to kill me because he wanted to trick you out of the city and hand you over to me, and then I'll kill you all. Jiuying Hua's whole body was shocked, and all kinds of thoughts surged in his mind. Impossible. We are in a cooperative relationship with Luo Xianai. We have already given him so many benefits, there is no reason for him to betray us. What's more, we have the leverage over him. Isn't he afraid that we will expose him? Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly and said, you don't think that the conditions you offer can satisfy Mr. Luo? No, Mr. Luo's appetite is far beyond your imagination. He won't take the little benefits you give him to heart. Besides, Mr. Luo knows you have the leverage over him, but you didn't tell him. This makes him worried. In case he doesn't get along well with you one day, you will use those leverages to threaten him. For something like a threat, the sooner it is resolved, the better, isn't it? Jiuying Hua's body shook again, and finally wavered. He gritted his teeth and said, but you killed his son, how can we be allies? Luo Yan imagined the sinister smile of some people, and then imitated it. For a person like Mr. Luo, do you think he wouldn't have one or two illegitimate children? If this illegitimate child secretly threatens him, what do you think he will do? Besides, if he really cares about Luo Beachan so much, why did he ask for revenge on you a year after the incident? If he really wanted to avenge his son, would he let me live until now? These questions hit Jiuying Hua's chest like a giant hammer. The man's expression was distorted. He looked at the bodies of Jiuying and others, and finally squeezed out a word. Luo Xianai, you old thing. Seeing that Jiuying Hua had already made up his mind to kill Luo Xianai, Luo Yan shouted loudly, and burst out with amazing momentum. The dragon elephant pointed high. The heavy sword trembled. Then it whistled and slashed down. A sword light as thin as smoke and haze was cut out. The unique skill, a long rainbow. Exclamation mark. All the heads on the branches of the strange black tree in front of Jiuying Hua howled. This caused the sword light that was rushing forward at high speed to stagnate slightly. Then, gaps appeared on the sword light, as if it was bitten by countless invisible beasts. At this time, Jiuying Hua used some secret method to make a large amount of smoke spread out behind him. The smoke turned into the shape of wings, and Jiuying Hua soared into the sky, intending to fly away. At this time, there was another burst of momentum on the ground. Then a wave of high temperature passed over his left shoulder. The smoke wings on Jiuying Hua's side almost collapsed, and at the same time, a blood arrow spurted out of the man's shoulder. He glanced at the ground. His strange black tree had been split by the broken sword light, and then the blood-colored beast that followed it bit it into pieces. Jiuying Hua did not dare to stay anymore, and with a full hatred for Luo Xianai, he left in an instant. Looking at a small black dot going away in the night sky, Luo Yan smiled slightly. In this way, maybe there is no need to deal with Luo Xianai. The people of Huangquan will do it for him. Put away the dragon elephant and cancel the dragon transformation form. Luo Yan rode on the motorcycle left by Jiuying Hua, started and returned to the town. In the town, Yang Lixi washed his face and saw Luo Yan riding back on the motorcycle. As soon as Yang Hua left, the members of Huangquan in the town also ran away. Luo Yan deliberately took a detour when he came back, otherwise he would not dare to swagger back to the team camp. Do you know who did it? Yang Lixi was furious. It was not easy to go out for a long time, and the team was almost destroyed. It would be strange if he was not angry. The people Luo Xianai called were not targeting you, but me. Luo Yan got off the car and looked around. What's the situation? All the cars are destroyed. I guess we have to walk to the next base and buy a few more cars. Yang Lixi said with a bitter face. Then he said, Luo Xianai is crazy, right? This old man can't even be elected as the city lord, and he dares to jump like this. I'll ask my dad to kill him later. Luo Yan pointed outside the town and said, there are several motorcycles on the road outside. You ask someone to drive them back. It should be enough for us to reach the next part. Yang Lixi immediately gestured to the guards. These people left the city after dawn. Luo Yan rode a motorcycle alone. Yang Lixi and the remaining guards followed behind. Several motorcycles drove on the desolate land. In the evening, they finally saw a surface base. Chapter 524 Little Grass. Black Spider Base. This base has never been near the forbidden area. It serves as a supply point and buffer zone. Therefore, the scale of the base is not very large. According to the information obtained, there are only 2 mechs in the base, which are old-fashioned mechs. The old-fashioned mechs are all models eliminated by the legions of various dungeons. These mechs are far inferior to the mechs currently in service in terms of power and performance. For a small place like the Black Spider Base, it is already good to have 2 old-fashioned mechs. At least, this base can be guaranteed not to be attacked by lower level behemoths. As long as the mid-level behemoths are not too difficult to deal with, they can at least be driven away if they cannot be killed. This is also the foundation of the Black Spider Base. Because of the mechs, the base can operate. Because of the protection of the base, all kinds of people come here. Let the base be revitalized. This is the way of survival in the new era. When Luo Yan and others arrived at the base on a motorcycle, the rusty gate of the base was open. Foreign vehicles and personnel were rushing into the base. It was getting dark. The base was going to close. Once the door is closed, you can't enter the base without a special relationship. At the gate of the base, a man with a face full of flesh was collecting money. Of course, the base will not let you use it for free. If you want to enter, you have to pay. Most of Luo Yan's supplies had been burned by the people of Huangquan. A few people got together just to collect a little entrance fee. Who knew that? When it was handed to the man took a look and then looked at Luo Yan and the others. Then his eyes fell on Luo Yan's dragon elephant and said loudly, your money is not enough unless you add this sword. Luo Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. The grass on the grave of the last person who asked for his sword should be tall and lush now, right? But before Luo Yan could get angry, Yang Lixi had already come over and said with a painful face, brother, we were robbed on the way. If it wasn't for this, you would definitely have benefited. My brother's sword as a last resort. I really can't give it to you. How about this? We have a few motorcycles here, and we'll give you one. The man looked at Luo Yan, and then looked carefully, and found that this young man gave people a very difficult feeling. Especially those red eyes. Luo Yan's pupils were almost completely red. This shows that the red poison is extremely serious. He could die from the poison at any time. On the surface, such people are usually as cruel as wolves. The man felt that it was not worth provoking such a cruel person, so he nodded. Okay. Yang Lixi took the opportunity to get close to him. Brother, you can tell at a glance that you are a big shot. Otherwise, why would they give you such an important matter as collecting the entrance fee? This shows that the higher-ups trust you. What's your name, brother? After taking Yang Lixi's benefits and praising him again, he didn't even know his last name. He clapped his hands and laughed. No problem. Everyone in the base calls me Leo Hu. If you guys run into trouble in the city, just say that we are friends of Leo Hu. I wouldn't dare mess with you. Yang Lixi said with a smile on his face. Brother Hu is such a good friend. He stuffed another box of anti-inflammatory drugs into Liu Hu's hand and said, "Brother Hu, I want to sell these broken cars and buy a decent one so I can hit the road tomorrow. Do you have any familiar stores to recommend?" Liu Hu rolled his eyes, then gestured and said, "After you go in, you do this first, then this, and you will arrive at Xing Motors. He sells all kinds of motorcycles and cars. You can also go to him if you want to buy a car. After you get there, just say that I, Liu Hu, introduced you here, and there will be some benefits for you." Yang Lixi certainly didn't believe that there would be any benefits. He said that it was his surname who introduced them, which was nothing more than a little money from the motorsport afterwards. He didn't mind these little things, and nodded, "Thank you, Brother Hu." Then the group of people entered the door. After entering the base, looking around, there were quite a few people coming and going here. There are many beggars in the corners of the streets and alleys, mostly old people and children. They are dressed in rags, with unkempt hair and dirty faces, and flies chasing around them. The children are okay, at least their eyes are sharp. The old people are like zombies, with empty eyes. When they see someone passing by, they numbly call out, "Please be kind, and give me something to eat." In troubled times, life is worthless. No one will stop for these beggars. Sometimes they are annoyed and kick them a few times. This is already normal on the surface, and no one will pay more attention to it. In fact, the Black Spider base allows these beggars to exist, which is equivalent to giving them invisible protection, which is already quite kind. Some extreme bases will not give these people a roof over their heads, let alone provide protection. Seeing those grey-faced children fighting over a piece of biscuit, Yang Liji clenched his fists, but said nothing. Luo Yan glanced at him, and did not express anything. At this time, a Yang family guard wanted to throw some bread to the children. Yang Like reached out, and held the guard's hand, and said in a deep voice, "Don't do unnecessary things. We are not here to provide disaster relief." It's not that he was reluctant to give up this little food, but he was worried about causing trouble. If there was trouble, he was not afraid, but he was afraid that Luo Yan would kill people. They went to the car dealership. Luo Yan thought buying and selling cars was too boring, so he gave the motorcycle to a guard and strolled around the base. Today is different from the past. He is no longer the kid who struggled to survive in the cracks. So he didn't deliberately disguise himself like before. With his current high-level combat power, he can basically walk sideways in a small base like this. But he didn't make a big deal. He was still walking on the roadside with his cloak and head down as usual. Occasionally, someone thought he was too clean and looked at him a few more times, but they didn't bother him because of it. Anyone with a little experience knows that on the surface, the cleaner the person, the more dangerous he is. Only a fool or a blind person would provoke such a person. So Luo Yan had no problem passing through. He walked around the base in a blink of an eye and found that the Black Spider base was small but well equipped. There were hotels, bars, and shops. Of course, the scale and level of these places were incomparable to the underground city, even the larger surface bases. After a round of walking without any incident, Luo Yan was about to go to the car dealership to see if Yang Li and his team had finished. He saw a Yang family guard looking for something in the crowd. Luo Yan frowned, came to him and coughed dryly. When the guard saw Luo Yan, he was like seeing a savior, and hurriedly said, "Mr. Luo, something happened. The young master had a conflict with the car dealership, and he asked me to find you." Luo Yan said in a deep voice, "Lead the way." The guard hurriedly led the way. In a blink of an eye, they arrived near the car dealership. Yang Li and several guards came over with a gloomy face. Chapter 525, Moon breaking through the clouds. This is too much. This is too much. Yang Lixi jumped up and down when he saw Luo Yan. Then he told him everything about the motorcycle dealership. It turned out that after they arrived at the motorcycle dealership, the owner of the motorcycle dealership saw that they were strangers. So he ate all the motorcycles. Yang Lixi certainly didn't agree, but the owner kept a cultivator of the intermediate realm. Yang Lixi saw that the man was not easy to mess with, so he swallowed his anger and retreated temporarily. After he finished speaking, Luo Yan said in surprise, "It is indeed rare to see an intermediate realm on the surface, especially in such a small place. But I remember that you are also in the intermediate realm, and you have already reached the great perfection. Yang Lixi took 2 steps back, turned around, and said, "Look at me." Luo Yan looked confused. "What are you looking at?" Yang Lixi said confidently, "How do you think I look like someone who can fight? I don't practice for fighting. Besides, don't you, Luo Yan? Why should I bother?" The muscles around Luo Yan's mouth twitched a little. In addition, looking at Yang Lixi's face, Luo Yan wanted to beat him up a little. Axon car dealership. "Boss, those newcomers are gone." A clerk smiled and said, "Boss, you have good vision. You can tell at a glance that those cars are good stuff. Let's take this batch of goods, dismantle the engines and other parts, and sell them for a lot of money." The boss of Axin car dealership is not Axin, but Zuo Bio. This guy is big and strong, with a dark face, big eyes, and 2 fierce eyebrows that are both complicated and dense. He laughed when he heard it. "That pretty boy, I thought he was very capable. Intermediate level? Bah." He was so scared when he saw Xiao Zhang that he didn't dare to breathe. After saying that, Zuo Bio looked at a tall and thin young man in the corner. The man had a high nose bridge, deep eye sockets, and wore a hat with the brim pulled down very low. He wore a leather jacket and leather pants, and was trimming his nails with a dagger. "This is a Xiao Zhang that Zuo Bio mentioned. He is a tough guy. Zuo Bio picked him up outside the base last year. At that time, Xiao Zhang was seriously injured. Zuo Bio saved him and took care of him for another half a year. Even so, he still coughed a few times. But since then, Xiao Zhang has been relegated to the car dealership. It was because of this ruthless man that Zuo Bio began to get bolder. He did all kinds of black things. Because of Xiao Zhang, who is at the intermediate level, the base can only turn a blind eye. Recently, Zuo Bio has even been thinking about becoming a member of the base committee. With Xiao Zhang as the trump card, he thinks it won't be that difficult, even if he becomes the head of the base. At this time, the guy next to him said, "But, that pretty boy said they have a master. Let us be careful." Zuo Bio slapped the table and raised his voice. "He's just a pretty boy who lives a life of idleness and waits for death. I've seen too many people like that. He doesn't have any skills, he just knows how to brag. An expert? If there's an expert, how can he let go so easily? If there's an expert, then come and kill me." His voice spread out of the car dealership and echoed in the alley. At this moment, Xiao Zhang in the corner suddenly raised his head, and a pair of triangular eyes flashed with surprise in the shadows. Then he suddenly pounced on Zuo Bio and kicked the owner of the car dealership. Ouch. Zuo Bio fell flat on his face. He turned around and said angrily, "Xiao Zhang, you." Before he finished speaking, he saw a vague red light breaking through the air. Passing by where he just stood, it easily split a table in half, and even cut apart the motorcycles and cars in the car dealership. Zuo Bio immediately broke out in a cold sweat. If Xiao Zhang hadn't kicked him just now, he would probably have been broken into 2 pieces. Until then, Zuo Bio just realized that there was a figure outside the car dealership. It was a young man in a cloak. His black hair danced gently in the night wind, and his red eyes reflected the lights. He had tightly pursed lips and a stern face. He looked at Zuo Bio as if he was a dead person. Xiao Zhang. The black-faced man looked at the thin and tall young man next to him for help. Xiao Zhang took a few deep breaths. Then he said, "If I don't die today, our accounts are settled." Then he walked out of the car dealership. Luo Yan heard his words, but he was unmoved. Looking at the tall and thin young man who walked over with one hand on his hat, Luo Yan said calmly, "If you are not from the car dealership, don't get involved. It's not worth losing your life for a profiteer." There was no emotion in Xiao Zhang's triangular eyes. "He saved my life." Luo Yan nodded slightly. This reason was enough. In the car dealership, Xiao Zhang suddenly exploded. The hat flew into the sky. He stepped forward, pulled out a long sword from somewhere, and slashed at Luo Yan with the force of thunder and lightning. He had already used some kind of fighting skills. It was not until Xiao Zhang appeared that the dragon elephant bounced up. The heavy sword was raised, and the sound of wind suddenly rang out. The sword body was shining with a red glow, and as the heavy sword slashed, a new moon appeared, reflecting the sky. Xiao Zhang's sword fighting skills were completely broken by this red new moon. The new moon fell on his head with the force of breaking through the clouds. Xiao Zhang was shocked, and felt that he was going to die. He roared and barely lifted it up. When the long sword touched the new moon, Xiao Zhang jumped up, as if he was electrocuted. Then the red new moon occupied the entire field of vision. The next second, Xiao Zhang lost interest. He flew out. From his shoulders to his chest, a wave of blood spurted out. With a plop, he fell to the ground like a piece of leather. Until then, the new moon slowly dissipated, revealing the majestic blade of the dragon elephant heavy sword. Using the combat skill to defeat the enemy in one go, Luo Yan was not surprised. He would be surprised if a mid-level realm could escape from his hands. The power of this combat skill can be divided into 3 levels: new moon, and full moon. Luo Yan just used the least powerful level. So Xiao Zhang coughed, recovered his breath, and found that he was only injured but not dead. He was very surprised. Luo Yan glanced at him indifferently, then turned around and walked back. Yang Lixi would come forward to negotiate the next matter. Seeing that the situation was settled, Yang Lixi immediately had a face of a villain who had succeeded, and ran up to point at Zuo Bio, whose face was pale, and shouted, "How is it? I told you before, these things of mine are hot. If you are not afraid of death, just swallow them." The next day, the 2 best cars in Ashen's car dealership drove out of the Black Spider base. The car was given by Zuo Bio, and there was a batch of supplies in the car. Last night, Yang Lixi plundered the car dealership thoroughly. He almost bankrupted Zuo Bio. But what really made Zuo Bio sad was that Xiao Zhang was gone. Without Xiao Zhang as his trump card, Zuo Bio would have a problem surviving in the base, let alone becoming a member of the base committee. The next day at noon, Luo Yan and his party finally arrived at Qingyang City. In the car, Yang Lixi said, "Let's have a good meal tonight. I have asked someone to transfer money to us from Guangling. Tomorrow, the cultivation garden in the forbidden area will be put up for bidding, and I don't know how to bid. Originally, I brought up your title of Qingyang God General and thought it was a sure thing. Unexpectedly, Qingyang only gave me the right to bid. They said that this cultivation garden was not open to the public, but now they allow us to bid for your sake. You are the savior of Qingyang City after all. You have saved so many lives. In the end, they are not willing to give us even a cultivation garden. Luo Yan, don't you think it's too much?" Chapter 526. Who are you? Luo Yan did not answer this question, but said, "I'm not free tonight." He was going to meet Yukiishu in the evening, but he was not free to have dinner with Yang Li. Then, they found a hotel to stay in. At night, Luo Yan left alone, and when he arrived at the old city of Qingyang, he had turned into a red ghost. Red building. This place has been renovated, since he drove a small mecha to destroy it. When Luo Yan arrived, he was immediately recognized. He was taken to a room in the back. On both sides of the room, there stood a woman with a high ponytail, a white suit, and a tang horizontal sword in her hand. When they saw Luo Yan coming, they pushed open the wooden door. Inside was the furnishings of the meeting room. There was a long carved wooden table, made of pear wood, which was sturdy and beautiful. On it were fruits and snacks for the people who were discussing. There was a girl in a cheongsam with a beautiful face serving tea and water. On both sides of the wooden table, there were high-backed chairs. At this moment, almost all the seats were occupied. Among those people, Luo Yan only recognized Chenling, the captain of the 4th team of Xuanming department, the one who owed Shiggy a lot of debt. Luo Yan didn't recognize any of the others. Luo Yan was a little surprised. He just came to see Yukiishu. He didn't expect to see Chenling here. As for the others, they might be other captains of Xuanming department. A cheongsam girl led them to sit next to Chenling. Luo Yan heard Chenling whispered, "Captain Shiggy, did you also receive an invitation from Captain Yu to attend this meeting?" Luo Yan remembered that when Zhao did say before that Yukiishu was looking for him, it should be to invite him to attend this meeting. He nodded slightly. Chenling said again, "Do you know what Captain Yu is going to say?" Luo Yan didn't know about this. At this time, he heard a voice grinning and said, "Who is this, wearing a mask and coming in?" Luo Yan looked up. Sitting opposite the long table was a man in his 20s. His hair was messy like weeds, his facial features were relatively flat, and when he smiled, he showed a golden front tooth. Chenling whispered, "That's the captain of Team 6, Huang Yu. He was just appointed last year. The previous captain of Team 6 died, so Huang Yu took over as his deputy." He casually introduced several captains. The man with thick eyebrows and big eyes, with a sunny and upright face, is Zheng Huan from Team 2. The man with yellow teeth and dirty jokes is Yidang from Team 5. At this time, Huang Yu said again, "Hey, I'm talking to you. You are the red ghost from Team 7, right? You are also new here, and you just joined our Zuanming department not long ago. Why are you looking at me like that?" Luo Yang quietly opened the Wu Wang blazing eyes, and glanced at Huang Yu. He found that this guy, like Chenling, was only at the intermediate level. Not worth mentioning. Huang Yu was about to say something, but at this time the door opened, and then Yuqiu Yushu's voice sounded behind Luo Yan. "Sorry, captains. Sorry to have kept you waiting." Except Luo Yan, almost everyone looked at Yuqiu Yushu. Yukiishu was wearing a white training suit, with her hair tied up high, and ponytailed to her waist. She was not wearing any makup, and even in flat shoes, she still showed her tall figure and heroic appearance. Under Luo Yan's gaze, a line of huge words appeared on Huang Yu's head. "Damn, if I can let this woman stay with me every night, it would be worth it to live 3 years less." I heard that Chigi and her have an ambiguous relationship, but I don't know if it's true. Could it be that Chigi is her lover? This can explain why Chigi's power has expanded so much not long after joining the Zuanming department. Humph, I'll see what kind of face Chigi has under his mask later, and see how he can fascinate Yukiishu. Looking at this information, Luo Yan frowned in the mask. At this time, Yukiishu walked to the main seat and sat down, smiling. "I called all the captains here today to discuss important matters. I thought Captain Chigi would not be able to make it, so I thought I would discuss it with Captain Chigi later. Since Captain Chigi is here, let's get started." Yukiishu was about to continue. Huang Yu raised his hand with a smile. "Wait a minute. Captain Yu, look at us. Everyone shows their true face. But here, someone is wearing a mask. I'm confused. Are you too embarrassed to see people, or have you been replaced by someone else?" Although Huang Yu did not specify, Hidang and others had already looked at Luo Yan. Yukiishu smiled. "Then what should we do according to Captain Huang's opinion?" Huang Yu suddenly jumped onto the table, squatted there, and stared at Luo Yan opposite. He said with a smile, "Of course, Captain Chigi, please take off your mask." Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly in the mask. "What if I refuse?" Huang Yu said with a frown. "Why refuse? Why, Captain Chigi dare not show his real mask." Luo Yan said indifferently, "What rules does the organization have that require you to show your true face?" Huang Yu responded tit for tat, "If you have a clear conscience, why do you have to hide it? Do I need your consent to decide what clothes I wear and whether I wear a mask?" Luo Yan said coldly, "You, who do you think you are?" Huang Yu's nostrils expanded, and he looked at Yukiishu. Yukiishu smiled indifferently and said, "The organization does not have any rules that require you to show your true face. Captain Huang, please sit down. This woman is really biased towards him." Exclamation mark. Minister Lin Yuanfang said that, "If I can help him merge the Zuanming department, he will give Yukiishu to me to warm my bed. Yukiishu will be mine sooner or later. How can I let Chigi get away with it?" When reading Huang Yu's thoughts, Luo Yan was slightly surprised. Lin Yuanfang, the head of the Zumang department, had actually bribed Huang Yu and set his sights on the Zuanming department. Was he looking for an opportunity to take advantage of the Zuanming department's lack of leadership? It seems that the internal struggles of the Black Witch organization not only occurred between teams, but also between branches. At this time, Huang Yu stood up and pointed at Luo Yan. "Captain Yu spoils you, but I don't. Today, no matter what, you have to take off the mask on your face." Luo Yan knew that this was jealousy and deliberately looking for trouble with him. Although he had nothing to do with Yuqiu Yushu, he didn't want to be insulted. He said calmly, Come and try to take it off. Do you think I dare not? Huang Yu immediately came to Luo Yan in 3 or 2 steps and stretched out his hand to take it off. Suddenly, a black gun pointed at him. Chenling, captain of Team 4, Chenling stood up and pointed his gun at Huang Yu. He said coldly, "Captain Huang, please return to your seat." The expression on Huang Yu's face was very interesting. Chenling actually pointed a gun at him. He had not expected this. "Why, Captain Chen? When did you become Team 7's dog?" Huang Yu narrowed his eyes. "Shoot if you dare." Enough. Yukioshu's face was covered with frost. "Captain Huang, enough of the jokes. Go back to your seat." Huang Yu smiled when he saw Yukioshu getting angry and raised his hands. "I'll listen to Captain Yu. Go back to your seat now." He turned around, looking like he was going to go back. Chenling also put down his gun. But at this moment, Huang Yu quickly reached out, grabbed Luo Yan's mask, and pulled it hard. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 527, War Clouds Rising. In an instant, several dragon scales appeared behind Luo Yan. He grabbed Huang Yu's wrist and twisted it without using any skills. Huang Yu's face immediately changed. He stared at his arm with wide eyes. Starting from the wrist, the muscles twisted and tore inch by inch, spraying out circles of blood mist. The terrifying power erupted from the masked red ghost's hand. It went up along his arm. Huang Yu screamed, turned his body 180 degrees, and then fell heavily on the long pearwood table. The fruits and snacks on the table were splashed everywhere, and the cups fell over. Everyone looked at Huang Yu again. The captain's arm was considered useless. The arm was twisted and deformed, the muscles were disordered, and the whole arm was covered with bruises. The flesh was torn, and the bones were broken. "You bastard!" Huang Yu roared. He thought he had a bright future, but now Luo Yan had crippled one of his arms. Even if it was cured, his skills would be greatly reduced. In a rage, he didn't care about anything else. The 5 fingers of the other hand opened wide, forming a claw shape, releasing the energy to transform into a beast claw. It grabbed Luo Yan in the chest. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly in the mask and was about to kill him. Suddenly, a whip formed by a stream of water rolled over. It entangled Huang Yu's hand. With another swing, Huang Yu flew out, sticking to the wall. Before falling, the water whip kept whipping Huang Yu, slapping his clothes to shreds and his flesh and blood. Then the water whip was retracted, and Huang Yu slid down the wall like a dead fish. The whole person collapsed on the ground. "Send Captain Huang Yu out," Yukioshu's voice sounded. Just now, the water whip came from her hand. Luo Yan remembered that this woman's divine treasure was moon in the water, and this water whip was probably not the true ability of the divine treasure. At this time, 2 women in white suits came in, lifted Huang Yu up, and dragged him away. Although Huang Yu was seriously injured, he finally saved his life. Luo Yan put away the dragon scales on his back and did not look at Yukioshu, as if he did not know that she was interfering. Yukioshu did this. In addition to saving Huang Yu's life, Luo Yan guessed that she probably also wanted to contain him. However, the others were already greatly shocked. Except for Chenling, who was at a lower level, the other captains were at a higher level. It was not difficult to see. If Yukioshu had not taken action, Huang Yu would have died here today. So they once again refreshed their impression of Luo Yan. Yukioshu smiled slightly and said, "Okay, captains. We have wasted too much time, so let's not waste any more time. I'll just say it directly. As everyone knows, the position of the head of our Zuanming department has been vacant for a long time. Our previous head disappeared after the giant beast disaster, and his life or death is still unknown. According to the organization's regulations, if a head is out of contact for more than 3 years without reason, he will automatically resign from his position as head. But with my insistence, I barely dragged it on for another year. It can't be dragged on any longer now. There is no reason to drag it on any longer. Now the higher ups mean to either assign us a head or let us elect a head internally. I'm not talented, but I would like to ask all the captains to support me and become the head of the Xuanming branch. Hearing this, Hidong and Zheng Huan seemed to have known about this for a long time, and their expressions did not change. Chen Ling's body shook slightly, and it was obvious that he had only found out today. Although Luo Yan did not show any body language, he was still shaken in his heart. Yukiashu wanted to become the head. This matter was not unexpected, but it was not unexpected. In the Xuanming department, she has the highest combat power and the greatest influence. The position of the director has been vacant for 4 years, so it is not surprising that this woman wants to become the director. She has been very restrained to be able to endure until now and make such a request. At this time, Hidong, with a mouthful of yellow teeth, said with a smile, Captain Yu is the best in our Xuanming department in terms of both personal strength and team management. He is really the best choice for the director. I, Hidong, will be the first to support it. The sunny and burly Zheng Heng also raised his hand and said, I also support Captain Yu to become the director of our Xuanming department. In fact, I have long felt that Captain Yu should step forward to lead our Xuanming department. Now that Captain Yu is finally going to step forward, I naturally agree with both hands. With these two captains expressing their opinions, Chen Ling couldn't help but look at Luo Yan. Luo Yan didn't make it difficult for him and nodded and said simply, I agree. He had no reason to object. He had the least experience in the Xuanming department. Although the power has developed well, it cannot be compared with a team like Yukiashu who is rooted in Qingyang. The most important thing is, he joined the Xuanming department and joined the Black Witch. It was to solve the secondary infection, not to become a minister. Seeing that Chigi also agreed, Chen Ling immediately expressed his opinion. As a result, Yukiashu received unanimous support. She smiled. She nodded and said, thank you all for your love and support. Please rest assured that I will not treat you unfairly. However, even with your support, whether you can become the minister still requires some planning. Among them, the organization has a requirement for the new minister. I must lead you all to do something big that contributes enough to the organization before we can get the recognition of the superiors. Hidong showed his yellow teeth and smiled. Since Captain Yu called us here, he must have a plan in mind. Yukiashu nodded slightly. That's right. She looked at Luo Yan. Not long ago, Captain Jiuying brought news about the Huangquan organization in the southern border. We learned that Huangquan is infiltrating the north and intends to expand its influence. So next, there should be a war between us and Huangquan. I hope to prove my ability through this incident, so as to get the recognition of the superiors. So I hope that all captains can be prepared. At the fastest, 3 months. At the slowest, half a year. We must have a battle with Huangquan. The meeting ended. Zheng Huan and others left the table one after another, going back to their respective territories to prepare for the battle with Huangquan. When Luo Yan was about to leave, Yukiashu stopped him. Then Yukiashu invited him to the quiet room for a chat. Following Yukiashu, Luo Yan watched the woman's ponytail swinging behind her. He guessed that she wanted to say something to him, but he had no idea. They came to a quiet room, which was elegantly decorated. A small incense burner on the table was emitting wisps of green smoke. After Yukiashu entered the room, he kicked off his shoes, revealing his bare feet. 10 crystal clear and round toes stepped on the cold floor and walked to a shelf. Captain Chigi, don't blame me for intervening just now. Huang Yu can't die for the time being. My becoming the minister will have a certain impact on people in other branches. Lin Yuanfang of the Jumang department is even more eyeing our Xuanming department. Huang Yu was bribed by him a long time ago and is a chess piece planted in our Jumang department. I also wanted to use Huang Yu to pass some wrong information to Minister Lin to confuse him, so I had to intervene. You won't be angry with me, will you? Chapter 528 Young Grass. Luo Yan frowned in the mask. Yukiashu's previous words were quite normal, but this last sentence always sounded a little awkward. You won't be angry with me, will you? This was just like the tone of a little woman acting coquettishly to her boyfriend. Luo Yan didn't know how to respond, so he just shut up. Anyway, he was always cold. This was also in line with Chigi's style. Yukiashu chuckled to himself and turned around. There was a long knife in his hand. Chigi, how old are you this year? Another strange question. Luo Yang pretended not to hear and looked around. Yukioshu said, there is no one else here, take off your mask. Yukioshu had seen his appearance before, so Luo Yan didn't pretend, and simply took off the wooden mask. Looking at Luo Yan's young face with black hair and red eyes under the mask, Yukioshu smiled. You wear this mask because you are worried that you are too young and the people under you will not obey you? Luo Yan finally responded with a HMM. Yukioshu shook his head and then threw the knife in his hand towards Luo Yan. Luo Yan reached out to catch it and then heard Yukioshu say, this is a knife I just received. The name of the knife is Blood Drink, not Snow Drink, but Blood Drink. Yukioshu emphasized, when it hurts the enemy, it will absorb the enemy's blood and energy. It is used to restore its own physical strength and energy. Of course, the effect is not so significant, but it is very sharp, and it will also make the enemy's blood and energy weak when attacking the enemy. Aren't you practicing the blood transformation sutra? It is quite suitable for you. Just think of it as a small gift from your sister. Luo Yan pulled out the knife. The blood drink has a simple shape and a blood groove. He tried to swing it, and there was a faint smell of blood in the knife wind. He put the knife away immediately. Then he said in a deep voice, Wenza will stay in Team 7 in the future. He can help me a lot. Yukioshu sat on a couch next to him, then put his legs together and lay on his side. He smiled at Luo Yan. It's okay, if you like it, just use it. There are mostly women here, he might not be used to it. Since I can help you, I'll give it to you. She then patted the empty space on the couch next to her. Why are you standing? Come sit here, sister. Why, are you afraid that sister will eat you? Luo Yan was unmoved. Yukioshu laughed to herself. Just kidding. You are not very old, but your personality is too mature. Like a little old man. Especially, seeing such a beautiful sister, you still look cold. This is a bit rude. Red Ghost, tell me, have you ever touched a woman? If you don't have experience, I can teach you. Luo Yan took the mask on the table and put it on his head again. Notify me when you take action. After saying this, he left the quiet room. Yukioshu's nose flared slightly and snorted softly. Stinky little ghost, you have no manners at all. You don't know what's good. Then she turned over and looked at the ceiling, and the little woman sighed softly. It's so hard to find a good man. Chigi is not bad, but he's too young. It seems like he's eating young grass. After a pause, Yukioshu suddenly laughed. So what if it's young grass? Young grass tastes better. Asterisk 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 in the morning, Luo Yan and Yang Lekei were having breakfast. The two did not eat at the hotel. Yang Lekei felt that, since it was a rare trip to Qingyang City, he had to try the local snacks. The ones in the hotel all tasted the same. Boring. Young Master Yang was tired of them. The two found a breakfast shop near the hotel, and Yang Lekei ordered a big meal. 8 treasure porridge, brown sugar steamed cake, mixed tofu shreds, boiled eggs, a plate of big meat buns, and 2 bowls of soy milk. Yang Lekei took a bite of the soy milk, tore open the meat bun, and stuffed some sesame oil mixed tofu shreds into it. He ate with relish. While eating, he handed a tablet to Luo Yan. Take a look. This is the bidding information for the Forbidden Cultivation Garden today. Luo Yan sipped some 8 treasure porridge, took the tablet, and looked at it, which contained some bidding information. Yang Lekei said while eating. Our biggest opponent today is Zheng Chao, who is invested by Tang Shi, and Han Dancing of Dancing Group. Hearing the name Han Dancing, Luo Yan's eyes flickered. Of course he remembered Han Dancing. When he came to Qingyang as an exchange student last year, Luo Yan earned 50 million work points from this man. He was deeply impressed by such a wealthy master. How could he forget it? At this time, Yang Lekei said, "Ha, isn't that Xiao Zhang from Ashen Car Dealership?" Luo Yan looked in the direction of his sight. Sure enough, he saw Xiao Zhang, who was tall and thin, and had a pair of triangular eyes. He left the Black Spider base, and came to Qingyang. But he looked very miserable, lowered his head, and turned into an alley quickly. Strange, what do you think he is doing in Qingyang? He's not trying to cause trouble for us, is he? Yang Lekei stuffed a bun in his mouth, and turned back to call, "Boss, bring some fried dough sticks." Luo Yan glanced at him and said, "Can you finish it?" Yang Lekei laughed. "I'm not good at fighting, But when it comes to appetite, I won't lose to you. After that, he devoured the food on the table like a whirlwind. At 9:40 in the morning, Luo Yan and his partner arrived at the Qingyang City Auction Investment House. The auction didn't start until 10 o'clock. However, there were already quite a few people gathered here. One after another high-end cars were parked on the site. Although the car that Luo Yan and his partner bought at the Black Spider base was already the most high-end car that Asian car dealership could show off, it was immediately outclassed by the cars here. In addition, their car came from outside the city and was covered with stains. Those well-dressed bidders all looked at them with contempt. Where did this car come from? It's so dirty. Did it drive to the wrong place? What is the security guard of the investment bank doing? He actually let such a car in. They better not park next to my car, otherwise it will get dirty and I will have to wash it again. At this time, the lobby of the investment bank opened. The manager of the investment bank came out and invited all bidders to rest in the lobby first. Tea and cakes have been prepared in the lobby for the guests to enjoy. Suddenly, people walked into the lobby. Yang Lekei and Luo Yan also walked into the lobby. The two came to the gate and took a look. They saw that the interior was decorated with gold and jade. Yang Lekei chuckled and said, "Once there was a site bidding in Guangling, and my father and I went to the investment bank once. But our Guangling investment bank is not as grand as this one." At this time, someone behind said dissatisfiedly, "Where did you come from? Good dogs don't block the road. Get out of here. You are blocking Mr. Zeng's way. You have no eyesight at all. Security, what are you doing? Is this a place where anyone can come in casually? Hurry up and drive these two guys away." Chapter 529 Qingyang God General. Luo Yan and his partner turned around and saw a young man in his 20s standing behind them. Behind this man was a team led by a middle-aged man in his early 40s. He was holding a cigar, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a slicked back hair. He was well dressed and wearing a bow tie, and he looked very stylish. At this time, the young man saw that Luo Yan and his partner not only did not give way, but looked at him instead. He wanted to show off in front of the middle-aged man, but Luo Yan and his partner did not cooperate. He was immediately furious and reached out to grab Luo Yan without waiting for the security guard to arrive. He wanted to push Luo Yan away. Luo Yan's face suddenly turned cold, but he was still sensible and just gently pulled his hand away. But Luo Yan swept him away, and the young man missed and fell to the ground without stopping. Seeing this scene, the people in the hall naturally laughed. The middle-aged man and the team behind frowned even more, as if blaming the young man for his incompetence and losing his face. On the ground, the young man felt his face burning. The laughter in the hall, the frown of the middle-aged man. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to find a crack in the ground to hide. He looked at Luo Yan, blaming Luo Yan for making a fool of himself. He was so angry that he yelled and kicked Luo Yan. Luo Yan saw that he didn't know what was good for him, so he was no longer polite to him. He kicked him too. The two sides collided. Crack. A sharp bone fracture sound suddenly sounded. The young man's face changed, his expression twisted, and then he screamed, "My foot! My foot!" His foot was deformed, and it was obvious that the bone was broken by Luo Yan. At this time, no one in the hall could laugh. Instead, there was a gasp. "Who is that young man? He broke the opponent's leg with one kick. Oh, you don't think he's very impressive, do you? Let me tell you, he's going to be in trouble. Look who's behind him. He's from Tangxi Investment Company. Isn't that the guy with the slicked back hair Zeng Chao? Really?" After the Chu family fell into decline, Han Dongxing originally took over the business of Qingyang City. But at that time, the giant beast invaded, and Qingyang suffered heavy losses. In order to resume production and construction as soon as possible, the municipal government attracted foreign investment. Tangxi Investment Company moved in so aggressively. After half a year, it felt like it was sharing the world with Dongxing Group. These two young people who don't know the world's depths have offended Zeng Chao. How can it end so easily? But why do I feel familiar with that young man with red eyes, as if I've seen him somewhere? In the hall, bidders were talking. The middle-aged man holding a cigar from the investment team outside the door finally snorted. "Be careful of the owner before you beat a dog. Young man, You kicked my assistant and crippled him. Isn't that a bit too much? This person was Zheng Chao. As soon as he spoke, a man came up from behind and said, I'm lawyer Yang Cheng. Sir, you injured someone from our company. It constitutes intentional injury. Now I will hold you accountable on behalf of Tangxi Investment Company. Notify the Land Security Bureau to arrest him immediately. Immediately, an assistant made a phone call. What's going on? At this time, a team of people came. They were security guards from the investment bank. The lawyer named Yang Cheng immediately stepped forward to accuse Luo Yan of wounding someone and asked the security guards of the investment bank to control Luo Yan first. But at this time, someone came out. I saw it clearly just now. It was clearly someone from your Tangxi company who started it first. How can Xiao Luo's counterattack be considered intentional injury? Suddenly, everyone looked over. Behind the team of security guards, 4 or 5 men came out. They were wearing the uniforms of the Qingyang City Ground Corps. It was the people from the Mecha Corps who came. And Luo Yan recognized the person who was speaking. It turned out to be Shen Biao. Shen Biao nodded slightly to Luo Yan, then laughed and said, besides, don't say that Xiao Luo only crippled one of his legs. Even if he is killed, he deserves it. Shen Biao walked in front of Luo Yan and looked at Zheng Chao with a smile. It's okay for him to bite people like a dog, but if he bites someone he shouldn't bite, he deserves to die. Zheng Chao was stunned and didn't understand at all. Why would the Qingyang Corps protect an unknown young man? Then he saw Shen Biao turned around and smiled at Luo Yan and said, can I talk to you for a moment? The commander asked me to bring you a few words. There are so many people here, it's not convenient. Shen Biao's whole body shook again. The commander brought a message. What kind of background did this young man have that the commander of the Qingyang Corps had to send someone to send him a message? Soon, Luo Yan and others left. Zheng Chao came back to his senses. He glanced at the assistant who was still wailing on the ground. He said unhappily, get rid of this embarrassing thing. Don't you think I've embarrassed myself enough? After saying that, he walked into the hall. Suddenly, the lawyer next to him suddenly realized, I know who he is. Then, lawyer Yang Cheng took out his mobile phone, operated it, and handed it to Zheng Chao. Zheng Chao took it and looked at it. There was a picture inside, which was a statue in Qingyang City. This is a statue commemorating the invasion of the giant beast in Qingyang City more than half a year ago. There is a young man in the statue, and his eyebrows and eyes are very similar to the young man with black hair and red eyes just now. Zheng Chao was stunned. He raised his head and said, could the young man just now be the one who saved Qingyang City? Yang Cheng nodded, it must be him. Qingyang God General. Only in this way can it explain why the Corps would protect him. When Zheng Chao and others guessed Luo Yan's identity, Luo Yan and Shen Biao came to a VIP room of the investment bank. After entering, Shen Biao laughed and gave Luo Yan a big hug. Long time no see, Xiao Luo. Half a year no see, you've grown a lot. Luo Yan was deeply impressed by Shen Biao. When Chu Xianaya was killed, it was Shen Biao who brought people to the scene to pick him up. Later, when the Chu family's secret base was destroyed, it was Shen Biao and himself who acted together. So in the Qingyang Corps, Luo Yan still had a good impression of him. After a round of greetings, Shen Biao smiled bitterly and said, Xiao Luo, the captain asked me to apologize to you. Originally, with your contribution to saving Qingyang City, let alone 1 cultivation garden, even 10, as long as you want, I will give it to you. But our Corps has no right to intervene in the affairs of the cultivation garden, which is under the jurisdiction of the municipal government. So the Corps can only get you a bidding quota. I'm really ashamed. Luo Yan also knew that a dungeon city was not decided by the Mecha Corps. He immediately expressed his understanding. Shen Biao said again, today, in addition to sending a message to the group leader, in addition, I also want to talk to you about the bidding. Because this is a cultivation garden located in a forbidden area, when bidding, in addition to the price, there is another thing to pay attention to. Yang Leke came over. Since it was related to the cultivation garden, of course he paid attention. Then he heard Shen Bio say, in addition to the strong financial resources of the investor, the underground city will also consider whether the bidder has the ability to protect the cultivation garden. Therefore, after the price bidding is over in the morning, the underground city will let the 3 parties with the highest bids and the masters of each faction show their martial arts, so as to make a comprehensive consideration and finally decide who will get the cultivation garden. Chapter 530 Advance Notice. Shen Bio and the troops left. Yang Lixi held his head and said, "This is really a case of man can make 1,000 plans, but God can only make one." Luo Yan glanced at him curiously, wondering what young Master Yang was planning again. Yang Lixi raised his head and smiled bitterly. "I never thought it would be so troublesome before, so the budget was also relatively limited." Luo Yan asked, "How much budget have you prepared?" Yang Lixi shook one of his hands. 50 million. I only prepared 50 million. I can't take out more. I have already taken out all the money we made in Medicine Valley before. Luo Yang couldn't help but look at him. From the tone of his voice, this guy just used his own money and didn't ask his family for it. Yang Lixi seemed to know what Luo Yan was thinking and shook his head and said, "The money for setting up the medicinal materials company was given by my old man. I can't ask him for it again, otherwise he will look down on me. Normally, 50 million is definitely enough. But now there is a Tangxi investment company, and the Dancing group seems interesting too. I can't compare with these 2 companies. It seems like this trip is in vain." Seeing that he looked pitiful, Luo Yan comforted him. "Just think of it as a way to broaden your horizons." Yang Lixi raised his head and rushed over. "Luo Yan, you are really my good brother." After taking a step, Yang Lixi stopped, and the unsheathed dragon elephant was already pointing in front of him. Yang Lixi laughed dryly twice, and then said proudly, "We may not be able to bid for the plantation, but we can't let people look down on us. I will bid 50 million in one go. Even if we can't bid, we have to raise the price. Even if those old guys succeed, they have to cut some meat." Luo Yan put down the dragon elephant, shook his head, and ignored him. At this time, there was a knock on the door, and then a voice sounded outside. "Is Luo classmate here? I'm Huangzin. I wonder if you still remember me." Luo Yan certainly remembered that it was Han Dancing's assistant. He went down and opened the door. Sure enough, the person standing outside was Han Dancing's assistant, Huangzin. When Huangzin saw Luo Yan, a smile appeared on his face, and he turned around and said, "Mr. Hong, it is indeed Luo classmate." Luo Yan realized that Han Dancing had also come, just behind him. This man seemed to have a thicker waist, wearing a hat, and leaning on a cane. Very stylish. At this time, he laughed and walked up and said, "Just now I heard that Tangxi Investment and Zheng Chao were embarrassed outside the gate, and I heard that the people of the core came forward to defend them. I guessed that it might be your brother Luo who came, and I guessed right. Brother Luo, can we talk?" After a while, Luo Yan invited Han Dancing into the room. Huangzin closed the door. Luo Yan introduced Han Dancing again. "This is my classmate and partner, Yang Lixi." Han Dancing also gave Luo Yan enough face, with a smile on his face, stretched out his big hand, and said simply, "Hello, Xiao Yang." Without Luo Yan's introduction, Yang Lixi also knew who he was. Shaking Han Dancing's big hand, he kept saying, "I have heard of you for a long time." After a brief greeting, several people sat down. Han Dancing said straight to the point, "Brother Luo, are you also here for the forbidden cultivation garden of the Chu family?" Luo Yang nodded calmly. Han Dancing said, holding a cigar, "I'm afraid it's not that easy. Zheng Chao, who is invested by Tangxi, is also determined to get this plantation. How much budget have you prepared?" Luo Yan looked at Yang Lixi. The latter smiled bitterly and said, "Uncle Hong, we have prepared 50 million. This kid really knows how to build relationships. He called me uncle when they just met." Luo Yang couldn't help but look at him and got a better understanding of his shamelessness. Han Dancing was not displeased by Yang Lixi's uncle. He laughed and said, 50 million, you guys are fine. If it were any other time, 50 million would definitely be enough, and there would be more. But now that we've met Zheng Chao, it's still a little short. I guess his budget is about 70 to 80 million. How about this? Uncle will give you an extra 50 million. After you take over the plantation, give me 20% of the annual profit. Yang Lixi was overjoyed and couldn't believe his ears. Luo Yan said, didn't Mr. Hung also bid for the plantation? Before, I did, but since you want it, I, old Hung, don't need a plantation. I'll give it to you. Besides, I know my own business. The only masters I can get are the two brothers Jihangji and Jihangsheng. I know how capable they are. I won't come out to embarrass myself. But the most important thing is that I want to suppress Zheng Cheo's arrogance. After this kid came to King Jiuying, he was very arrogant and used all means to snatch the business of my dancing group. It's a good time to teach him a lesson today. Yang Lixi glanced at Luo Yan at this time, asking for his opinion. Luo Yan nodded slightly. He had used the Wu Wang blazing eyes to peek into Han Dancing's mind and confirmed that he was not lying. Yang Lixi said, no problem, Uncle Han. If this thing can be done, you will definitely get 20% of the annual profit of the cultivation garden in the future. Han Dancing stood up and said, give me your account number. I will transfer the money to you now. Don't let Zheng Cheo laugh at you when you can't come up with so much money when the capital verification is required after the photo is taken. After Yang Lixi gave Han Dancing an account, Leo Hang's 50 million work points were soon credited to the account. Now, there was 100 million in the account, and Yang Lixi's face seemed to be shining, and he sent Han Dancing out respectfully. Back in his room, Han Dancing smiled and smoked a cigar. Assistant Huangzhen said with a smile, Mr. Hung, you are so generous. You cut our budget in half and gave it away directly. Han Dancing scolded with a smile, you kid, don't beat around the bush. You want to say that I gave those two classmates too cheaply, right? 50 million was thrown out and only 20% of the profit was taken. If this word gets out, I, Han Dancing, will definitely be regarded as a scapegoat. However, time will prove my vision. That classmate surnamed Yang is fine, but classmate Luo, you just wait and see. Sooner or later, he will soar to the sky. I call this investing in advance. Even if the investment fails, it doesn't matter. After all, classmate Luo has saved the underground city and indirectly saved my life. My life is worth 50 million, right? Huangzhen said immediately, more than that. After a while, a staff member came to inform that the auction would start in 10 minutes. Han Dancing stood up, let's go. I can't help but want to see Zheng Cheo's expression when he is beaten by two classmates. That must be very interesting. Auction hall. When Luo Yan and Yang Lixi arrived, they immediately attracted many looks. Look, it's those two young men. Good fellow, they beat up Zheng Cheo's people and nothing happened. It seems that the kid with red eyes is really the King Jiuying God General. But even if he is the King Jiuying God General, does he have so much money to bid? Amid the discussion, Luo Yan and Yang Lixi had already taken their seats. Chapter 531 The Final Decision. Zheng Cheo, holding a cigar and wearing gold-rimmed glasses, was walking along the passage to the auction hall. Are all the funds in place? Zheng Cheo asked casually. Now he had forgotten the unpleasantness that happened at the gate. After all, compared with the main business, that little thing was nothing. He didn't want to pursue it, nor did he dare to pursue it. In any case, he was not arrogant enough to think that he could challenge the mecha core in the underground city. It is important to know one's own limitations. If you act like a spoiled brat, it depends on who your opponent is. His assistant, a pretty beauty, nodded. It's in place, Mr. Zheng. A total of 80 million. It has been received. Tangxi Investment will naturally not only have this little money, but recently, they have made several investments. At present, the funds that can be embezzled are only 80 million. But 80 million is not a small amount, and it is more than enough to bid for a plantation. The only thing to worry about is Han Dancing of Dancing Group. Zheng Cheo has asked an economist to calculate that once the investment in the plantation exceeds 70 million, the profit will basically become limited. It will take at least 3 years to get back the investment. So, normally, the upper limit of the bidding for the cultivation garden is between 40 and 50 million, which is about right. But Han Dancing is rich and sometimes he acts on impulse. It is difficult to guarantee that he will not raise the price when bidding. When Zheng Chao thought about this, he heard a burst of laughter. Zheng Chao raised the corner of his mouth. "Speak of the devil, and the devil will appear." Then he put on a smiling face, turned around, and looked at Han Dancing, who was walking from behind. "Brother Dancing, nice to see you again. I missed you so much after having tea with you last time. I was thinking about visiting you again soon. I'm just too busy and haven't found the time." Han Dancing came over and patted Zheng Chao on the shoulder. "Brother Zheng, I know, I understand. You guys at Tangshi have been very active recently. Brother Zheng is busy all the time, so he's definitely busy. Unlike me, hey, several old projects have been intercepted by you guys at Tangshi, and we at Dancing seem to have nothing to do and can only eat and wait for death." The two of them spoke wittily, back and forth. If you don't know, you would think they are close friends. Who would have thought that the gunpowder in their words was so strong that it was choking? After the two entered the auction hall, they dispersed and found their own seats to sit down. After sitting down, Zheng Chao's smile disappeared, his nostrils slightly opened, and he snorted. "This Han guy is here after all. You all cheer up. Don't let this Han guy cheat you." Everyone in his investment group nodded. At this time, the lights in the hall went out. Then a beam of light fell on the stage. The host in charge of the auction came up, and after a few brief greetings, he began to introduce the cultivation garden. After the introduction, he announced, "The auction will start now. The reserve price is 20 million. Each bid will increase by 5 million. If there are no problems, let's start." Zheng Chao smoked a cigar calmly and said to the assistant next to him, "Don't rush to raise your hand. It will make us look ungentlemanly. We will harvest after the price is raised to a higher level. You just need to keep an eye on Han Dancing. We want to snipe him. Every time he shouts, we suppress him. Today I'm going to beat this Han face up." As he was talking, suddenly, someone shouted, "We bid 50 million. The whole auction hall was quiet. A light column fell on a bidder. The man even stood up, turned around proudly, and bowed to the people around him, just short of shouting "Admit." Yang Lixi. Zheng Chao certainly recognized this kid. He didn't expect that Yang Lixi would raise the price to 50 million as soon as he opened his mouth. Zheng Chao was choked by the cigar smoke and coughed non-stop, making gestures repeatedly. The lawyer beside him understood and stood up and said loudly, "Bidding is not a joke. You have to buy it if you make an offer." "Young man, do you have so much money?" Yang Lixi laughed. "Since I dare to walk in here and make an offer, do you think I have so much money? As for you, if you want, then follow up. If you don't want, then shut up. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Lawyer Yang Cheng, who was from the same family as Yang Lixi 500 years ago, snorted and said, "Organizer, 50 million is not a small amount. Do you think a child can come up with so much money? I suggest that we verify his capital. Don't wait to make a fool of yourself." Yang Lixi sneered, "Verify the capital, but if I can really afford the money, what will you say?" Yang Cheng shrugged, then continue. "That's it? You wish? After you've caused trouble for me, your young master, you pat your butt and say continue, and you want to leave. You can verify the capital. After the verification, if there is no problem, you have to climb up 3 laps on the spot. Then say to me, 'Dad, I was wrong.' Do you dare?" Yang Lixi pointed at the lawyer and shouted. Yang Cheng was a little embarrassed. He saw Yang Lixi was so tough and seemed to be really rich. He didn't want to lose face with this person, so he quickly said, "What nonsense, forget it. I won't bother with you, kid." After saying that, he sat back. Yang Lixi laughed. "Coward." Then he said to the host, "Host, why don't you knock the hammer?" The host quickly said, 50 million, the first time. Is there anyone who bids? Zheng Chao's assistant quickly raised the sign. Okay, Tangshi company bids 55 million. Is there any more? 70 million. Yang Lixi raised the sign again. A light cry suddenly sounded in the hall. Zheng Chao's eyes widened even more. Originally, his imaginary enemy was Han Dancing, but he didn't expect that he would be sniped by a kid here today. He glared at the assistant and made a gesture. The assistant stood up. 80 million. This is already the bottom line of Tangshi Investment Company. But before the voice fell, Zheng Chao heard the voice that made him hate it so much. 90 million. It's Yang Lixi again. Exclamation mark. The price was raised by another 10 million. Zheng Chao lowered his voice and roared, "Go, ask the company to get me another 20 million. I don't believe that kid can come up with 100 million. The assistant hurriedly called, but Tangshi company had less than 20 million in funds that could be embezzled. It would definitely not be solved in 3 to 5 minutes to squeeze out this amount of money. However, the auction would not wait for anyone. 90 million, the first time. 90 million, the second time. 90 million, the third time. Deal. Bang. The host hammered down. The hammer was final. Zheng Chao's eyes went dark, and he almost fainted. He quickly took out a bottle of medicinal oil and rubbed it on his nose. At this time, he saw Han Dongxing stand up, wave to him with a smile, and then walk towards Yang Lixi and Luo Yan. Soon the three of them gathered together, talking and laughing. Zheng Chao immediately realized that he had tricked Han Dongxing after all. Chapter 532, Beast Transformation. The auction was over. The bidders who came out of the hall were talking about it. It's really eye-opening today. Tangshi investment was beaten to a pulp. Wow, that kid drove a broken car. I thought it was a kid from some family who came with adults to join in the fun. In the end, he spent 90 million. 90 million, not 900, not 9,000, but 10,000. Where did this kid get so much money? It's really surprising. In the end, the capital verification passed. It's really magical. Kids nowadays are really not simple. Haha, Zheng Chao was so angry that his face was crooked. I guess he never dreamed that he would be sniped by a kid today. That's not right. Zheng Chao was very arrogant after coming to King Jiuying and sniped many projects of Dongxing Group. Unexpectedly, he was hunting geese all day and got his eyes pecked by geese today. Look, those two kids are coming out. People looked over. Luo Yan and Yang Li came out together. The latter was in high spirits and walked like the wind. Luo Yan was really afraid that he would float up to the sky. He couldn't help but remind him, "Don't be too happy too soon. Didn't you hear Captain Shen say that after the auction, there will be a fight between the three parties with the highest bids? After comprehensive consideration, the ownership of this forbidden land cultivation garden will be decided." Yang Lixi laughed and said, "Only us and Lao Zeng are bidding today. I don't know who Lao Zeng can bring out, but I don't believe he can get a master of Tangxuan realm. As long as he is not in Tangxuan realm, who can be your big brother's opponent?" Luo Yan said modestly, "I'm only one level higher." Yang Lixi smiled and said, "Whoever really uses your realm as a combat power assessment will be a sucker. Anyway, today we at least won half the game. Let's go celebrate. Asterisk 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 underground city, Bingayao. In the old city, teams of security guards from the local security bureau are shuttling through the streets and alleys. Look here. Team 4, go search over there. We must find the murderer. That kid is simply a beast. He actually killed his own parents. Teams of security guards are shuttling through the old city, searching for something. In a factory warehouse in the old city, a figure was curled up in a corner, trembling constantly. Tears fell from his childish face. Why? Why did that happen? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? A light flashed through the cracks in the wall, illuminating the figure of a teenager. The boy's name was AG. Last night, he was so beastly that he killed his biological parents in an extremely cruel and beast-like manner. Until now, he still couldn't believe that he did it. He only remembered that he felt very irritable last night and then fell asleep in a daze. When AG woke up, he found himself sitting in a pile of bloody and fleshy remains. And then, he remembered what he had done last night. He turned into a beast. He pounced on his beloved parents. At this time, a light fell on his face. AG raised his head suddenly, and in the light, his eyeballs shrank slightly, and then became like the pupils of some kind of cat. A woman's voice rang out. "AG, is that you?" A figure of a woman in her early 20s flashed through AG's mind. She was a female worker in the factory, named Jiuying. She was always gentle, and sometimes she would hide some fruits or snacks for him. AG liked her very much, and was very dependent on her. Sister Jiuying and AG came out, his mouth twitching. "It wasn't me. I didn't kill my parents. The woman named Jiuying exclaimed softly. It turned out that in the light, Azu's face, arms, and chest had grown short black hair. The fingernails became sharper and had a certain arc, like the claws of a beast. Behind Ag, a tail like a black panther was raised. Don't come over. Jiuying exclaimed softly. Ag seemed not to hear. Tears welled up one by one. Listen to me, Sister Jiuying. Although it looks like I did it, it wasn't me. I was like something was controlling my body. Do you believe me, Sister Jiuying? However, the woman screamed in fear. Don't come over. She even shouted outside the door. Someone come. Ag is here. Ag is here. Ag panicked. Don't shout, Sister Jiuying. Don't shout. Don't shout. In the darkness, Jiuying seemed to hear the roar of a beast. She turned her head. She saw the boy using his hands and feet like a beast and pounced on her. The flashlight in her hand fell to the ground and the light shone on Ag and Jiuying. Two shadows were cast on the wall. One of them pressed on Jiuying like a beast. Then he waved his hands and a puff of blood immediately sprayed on the wall and then slowly flowed down. Old City, King Iron Lane. ZHEKUI stood in the door of the house with his hands behind his back, looking into the distance. The corners of his mouth lifted up, revealing a hidden and ferocious smile. I can already use the beast transformation technique, but humans are too weak now. The beasts created by the beast transformation technique are still a little weak. But it doesn't matter. This can also stimulate the beast nature in their hearts and make them commit more killings. Thus, my broken tent blood plate will be complete. He stretched out his hand, and blood surged in the palm of his hand, condensing into something like a compass. However, on this compass, what was marked was not a direction, but a twisted human figure that seemed to be in great pain. There were many tiny veins on this human figure, like blood vessels in the human body. Now, these veins are gradually filling up with blood. 1/3 of the veins have already been filled with blood. Asterisk 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 that night. Luo Yan and Yang Li returned to the hotel after eating and drinking. In the car, Yang Li looked at the message sent by the investment bank. Well, because only we and Tang Shi are competing for the plantation. So, in 2 days, we will conduct a military demonstration with Zheng Chao. In order to intuitively understand the strength of both sides, we will confront each other at that time. The two sides will confront each other on a single plank bridge, and each side will send one person to the stage each time. The one who falls or surrenders will be considered the loser. Both sides can only send 5 people at most, and the one standing at the end wins. After watching it, Yang Lixi held his head and said, before we set off, I didn't know there was such a thing. What should we do? You and I are only 2 people. As soon as he finished speaking, the car suddenly braked. Before Yang Lixi asked what happened, he saw a figure bumping into the windshield in front of him, and then lying on the engine cover of the car. It was Xiao Zhang from Ashen Car Dealership. Xiao Zhang's face was covered with blood, his eyes were closed, and he looked unconscious. At this time, several people chased out from the alley on the side of the road, pointing at Xiao Zhang and shouting, "That guy's there, hurry up, don't let him run away." Chapter 533, Retreat to Advance. Seeing Xiao Zhang lying on the hood of the engine, Yang Lixi was stunned for a moment. Just as he was about to ask someone to move Xiao Zhang away, he heard Luo Yan whisper, "Save him." Yang Lixi was stunned for a moment, but he did not hesitate, nor did he ask why. He got out of the car directly and gestured, and several Yang family guards got out of the car together. They stood beside Yang Lixi to show their strength. Luo Yan lifted Xiao Zhang up and sent him to the car, then looked at the man running towards the alley. When the men saw Xiao Zhang was put into the car, the leader pointed at Yang Lixi and others and shouted, "Brother, this has nothing to do with you. I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." Yang Lixi laughed. "Xiao Zhang is my buddy. I will definitely take care of this business. Who are you? You beat Xiao Zhang like this? You call the local security bureau. You call the military corps. I want to see which guy is so arrogant, daring to shout and kill in the streets, thinking that there is no law in Qingyang City, right? Young Master Yang doesn't need to pretend to be a young master, and he can't pretend." As soon as he stood up and pulled his throat, his aura came out. Those people saw that this guy looked arrogant and seemed to be of great origin, and he was going to call the military corps directly, and they were a little panicked. The leader pointed at Yang Lixi and shouted, "Good boy, you have guts. You can protect him for a while. Can you protect him for a lifetime? Let's wait and see." After leaving a few polite words, those people immediately scattered. Hotel. Xiao Zhang groaned and woke up. Seeing the unfamiliar place, he instinctively turned over and squatted on the bed, ready to pounce at any time. Then he saw Luo Yan. Xiao Zhang was stunned. "It's you?" Luo Yan nodded. "How are you?" Xiao Zhang's eyes dimmed slightly, and then he whispered, "It's just a minor injury. It's no big deal." Luo Yan didn't say anything. He didn't know how to comfort people, stood up and walked out of the room. He ran into Yang Lixi head on. Luo Yan glanced at the room and said, "That man is quite good at fighting, and is also righteous, otherwise he wouldn't be relegated to working an axe in car dealership. If you take over the cultivation garden, you will need such talents." Yang Lixi smiled. "I understand." Then he asked a guard to follow him into the room. Luo Yan heard Yang Lixi say in the room, "You are seriously injured. Come, I have someone make some ginseng chicken soup. Don't say anything. Take a few sips to replenish your body first. If you have anything to say, let's talk tomorrow." Luo Yan smiled. Yang Lixi is indeed more suitable to be a lobbyist than himself. Also on this night, Zheng Chao's eyes were tired as he returned to his home in Qingyang City. This house was purchased when he came to Qingyang City. It was a single family villa with a garden and swimming pool. After getting out of the car, Zheng Chao walked towards the gate. The door opened, and a man who looked like a housekeeper said, "Mr. Zheng, Mr. Jiuying is here." Zheng Chao's face changed slightly, and then he walked quickly to the study. Before entering the study, he made some adjustments and made a few exaggerated expressions. After getting ready, he pushed open the door and laughed. At this time, he was in high spirits and did not look tired at all. "Mr. Jiuying, you are finally back." The man called Mr. Jiuying was tall. He wore a suit and a bow tie, holding a cane in his hand, with a sharp look. "Zheng Chao, I heard that you lost the auction today." Zheng Chao's forehead was greasy, and he smiled and said, "I was indeed careless, and was stolen by a little sly guy." Mr. Jiuying looked at Zheng Chao coldly, and the man opposite him was sweating at the tip of his nose, and then he said, "You were indeed careless, and you shouldn't have been. I told you early in the morning that we are determined to get this plantation. With it, we will have a legitimate reason to walk in the forbidden area in the future. We don't have to be sneaky like those people from Blackwitch. But you don't seem to take my words to heart." Zheng Chao shuddered and said quickly, "Mr. Jiuying, don't worry. It's true that we lost the bid, but it's hard to say who will get the plantation in the end. We still have a chance." Mr. Jiuying cast an inquiring look. Zheng Chao hurriedly explained, "In addition to the auction, the dungeon also stipulates that a fight must be held. The three parties with the highest bids will each send people to demonstrate. I have prepared the people. In a few days, I will definitely teach that kid a lesson." Mr. Jiuying snorted, "With your few people, can you stand up to the stage? If you replace me with my people, I will also take action. I can't fail again this time." In a blink of an eye, it was the day of the fight. In the hotel, Luo Yan and Yang Lixi were discussing the appearance. Yang Lixi said, "I'll go first. When I step down, your big brother will go." Luo Yan looked at him. That day in the Black Spider base, this guy said that he was not good at fighting. Why did he volunteer now? Yang Lixi probably guessed what Luo Yan was thinking, and said with a wry smile, "I'm really not good at fighting, and fighting desperately is not suitable for me. But like today, if you can't win, you can surrender. Anyway, your big brother will back you up, so I don't have any psychological burden." Luo Yan's mouth twitched slightly. At this time, he heard a voice saying, "Do you need help?" This was Xiao Zhang's voice. After 2 days of getting along, Luo Yan already knew that his name was Zhang Yi. But what did he do in Qingyang City, and why did he get injured? He still didn't mention it. Seeing that he took the initiative to volunteer, Yang Lixi glanced at Luo Yan and smiled. "This matter has nothing to do with you. It would be bad if you get hurt." Zhang Yi shook his head and said, "Is this related to the cultivation garden you mentioned these days?" "It doesn't matter. I can help. Anyway, I have to stay in Qingyang City for a while. If your cultivation garden opens, it would be fine if you can give me a job. Yang Lixi immediately blinked at Luo Yan, very proud, and then pretended to refuse, and then reluctantly agreed to Zhao Zhang to help. Luo Yan smiled. Yang Lixi's move of retreating to advance was indeed brilliant. He did not deliberately recruit Zhao Zhang, but revealed the information of the cultivation garden to let Zhang Yi make his own move. Then the three of them discussed and reached a consensus. Bu Zhang took the lead, Yang Lixi was in the middle, and Luo Yan was the last. After deciding, they went to have breakfast. 10 o'clock. Qingyang Gymnasium. Luo Yan got out of the car, picked up the heavy dragon elephant, and then followed Yang Lixi and others into the gymnasium in silence. One of the venues in the gymnasium has been arranged. A single plank bridge is placed in the middle of the venue. The bridge is narrow, only 2 feet wide. There is no room for evasion in such a terrain. Both sides can only fight hard. In this way, the winner can be determined within 3 or 5 breaths, which is straightforward and refreshing. At this time, Zheng Chao's people came. As soon as those people came in, Luo Yan felt that the people brought by Zheng Chao were not weak. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 534, Fierce Fight. Wu Wang Zuan is activated. Luo Yan looked at the people Zheng Chao brought. Jiuying chap, 27 years old, elite of Huanquan Black Robe. Realm, intermediate 2nd level. Chen Si, 32 years old, elite of Huanquan Black Robe. Realm, intermediate 4th level. Chu Ren, 25 years old, elite of Huanquan Black Robe. Realm, intermediate 3rd level. Luo Yan's pupils shrank slightly. Surprisingly, they are all members of Huanquan. So, Zheng Chao is a member of Huanquan. If so, Huanquan is taking a different approach. This time, they will not infiltrate the gang organizations in the underground city, but infiltrate through the business community. Suddenly, Luo Yan felt a gaze looking at him. He looked back calmly. His gaze fell on a tall man. Jiuying, 36 years old, backbone of Huanquan Zhang. Realm, advanced 3rd level. Luo Yan's breathing sank slightly. The backbone of Huanquan Zhang. The same class as Jiuying and Aoyang Hua. So, even if Zheng Chao is not from Huanquan, he is their agent. What's wrong? Yang Lixi asked, seeing Luo Yan's serious expression. Luo Yan retracted his gaze, turned his back to Jiuying, and said softly, when you go on stage, you need to go all out. If you feel defeated, don't hesitate, just surrender or fall off the bridge. None of those people are simple stuff. One is in the advanced realm, and the others are all in the intermediate realm. Yang Lixi opened his mouth slightly, then this Zheng guy is quite capable. He looked at Zhang Yi again. Are you okay? Zhang Yi was holding a long knife. His triangular eyes were full of indifference, and he shook his head gently. At this time, the host's voice rang out. Due to the last auction, only 2 bidders made bids. Therefore, today's competition will be participated by Tangxi Investment and Hanli Pharmaceutical. Let me explain the rules here. Each side can send up to 5 people on the stage. One person who comes up will be considered defeated if he falls off the bridge or surrenders. Others will come up until there is no one left. The side whose people are still standing on the bridge is the winner. In principle, I hope everyone will stop when they have made their point. But swords have no eyes, so since we are on the stage, there is no regret whether to die or not. If there are no problems, please send people on the stage. As soon as the host finished speaking, Zhang Yi raised his head, silently picked up his sword, and walked onto the single plank bridge. On the Zheng Chao side, a bald man came up with a long spear. Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly, and knew that the man was called Chen Si. Chen Si chose the long spear as his weapon, and his thoughts were obvious. There was no room to dodge on the single plank bridge, and the long spear was a long weapon, so it naturally had an advantage. Yang Lixi also saw this, and could not help but worry. Zhao Zhang, don't let others pick you off at the beginning. In a blink of an eye, the people on both sides have reached the single plank bridge. The host did not waste time and shouted, "Begin." Chen Si burst out his yuanli and strode towards his opponent. His long spear shook out countless gun flowers and covered Zhang. Zhang Yi's triangular eyes burst into sharp light, and his long sword dragged on the ground and swooped down, crashing into the gun flowers. He was willing to let the opponent's gun pass through his shoulder and tear a hole. He took the opportunity to stick to him. The long sword flew in the air. A wave of blood was drawn on Chen Si's chest. Chen Si screamed, lost his balance in pain, and fell off the bridge. The winner was decided immediately. The whole process of the fight was only a few seconds, but both sides were bleeding. Suddenly, a sense of tragedy arose. Seeing his man fall off the stage after a confrontation, Jiuying's face fell, and he said in a deep voice, "Chu Ren, you go." Chu Ren was wearing a turban, with a cruel smile on his face. He jumped onto the single plank bridge with two swords. When the host said start, he stepped forward and slashed, his two swords flashing with cold light, slashing at Zhang Yi's shoulders. This time Zhang Yi did not show off his strength, but took a step back first, and then suddenly rushed forward. The long sword flashed, picking out a blade arc. Chu Ren raised his two swords and crossed them, twisting towards Zhang Yi's abdomen like scissors. Puff, the swords of both sides burst out, and then they retreated. Zhang Yi had a cut on his abdomen. Blood stained his clothes. Chu Ren's eyes widened, and then a stream of blood spurted out from his throat, and his body fell off the bridge. In a blink of an eye, Zhang Yi won twice, but he was also injured. These two fights were more tragic than the last. The time was also extremely short. Almost in one round, the winner was decided, and life and death were determined. Two games were fought. Zhang Yi's face turned slightly pale, and he covered his abdomen with his hands. At this time, Yang Lixi shouted, "That's enough, Zhang Yi. Go down and surrender." Zhang Yi's eyes flashed, and then he nodded slightly. When the third person from Zhengchao came up, he said hoarsely, "I admit defeat." The host nodded. Zhang Yi then stepped down. Yang Lixi made a gesture, and a guard came to support Zhang Yi, and took him to the hospital for examination. Luo Yan said in a deep voice, "Be careful. Don't force yourself if you can't win." Yang Lixi laughed and said, "Don't worry, there are a lot of good days waiting for me. I won't lose my life here." Then he went on stage. Standing on the single plank bridge, he looked at Jiuying Cha, who had a tattoo on his face. The host looked at both sides, and then said, "Begin." Jiuying Cha immediately burst out his energy, and rushed towards his opponent with a long sword. Yang Lixi did not meet him, but just practiced his skills, and formed seals with his hands. A sharp whistle suddenly sounded on the single plank bridge, and the air between the two was slightly blurred and distorted. Then Jiuying Cha's long sword began to dance, and a sword beam was released, which continuously collided with the invisible airflow, causing the middle of the single plank bridge to explode. It was Yang Lixi who used the seventh mystical art, wind gun. After the wind gun, Yang Lixi formed a seal, and released a phantom wolf. Jiuying Cha just blocked the wind gun, and saw a wolf beast condensed by Yuanli rushing over. He immediately raised his sword to chop it, but for some reason, he felt that his move was 1 or 2 points slower than usual. Jiuying Cha didn't care. After spending a little time to chop the phantom wolf, Yang Lixi's wind gun came again. "Damn it!" Jiuying Cha shouted. Facing Yang Lixi's mysterious art suppression, he had no better way except to defend. Just as Jiuying Cha used his sword to chop the wind gun, Yang Lixi formed a seal again, this time releasing a ball of fire that kept twisting 15th mystical art, cloud splitting. Jiuying Cha didn't know whether it was because of excessive consumption or other reasons. The speed of the long sword's movement became slower and slower, as if it had fallen into a quagmire and was deeply stuck in it. Even though he saw the fireball coming, he was still a step slower. The fireball passed by the sword tip and exploded in his chest. The explosion almost broke the Yuanli layer protecting his body. Then the Yuanli jets splashed, causing blood flowers to appear all over his body. Luo Yan's mouth slightly raised. He knew that Jiuying Cha's attack speed slowed down because of Yang Lixi's divine treasure. Young Master Yang's divine treasure was the mud swamp of the natural system. The ability of this divine treasure was that when Yang Lix's attack hit the opponent's movements and the speed of the Yuan Li's operation would continue to decrease. In the end, it was like falling into a quagmire, unable to move, and could only be slaughtered. In the special environment of the single plank bridge, Yang Lix's divine treasure came in handy. Chapter 535. The cultivation garden is in hand. Shenzang, swamp. Every attack will make the opponent seem to fall into the swamp, getting deeper and deeper. Whether it is the movement or the speed of the energy circulation, it will become slower and slower. Just like now. Jiuying was hit by the splitting cloud, and his speed slowed down a little. So much so that a tornado hit him head on, and he didn't have time to use his sword to break it. He could only watch himself being lifted up by the tornado and thrown off the bridge. The winner is Lihan Pharmaceutical. Tangxi Investment, please send the next challenger to the stage. The host announced. In a blink of an eye, 3 people from Tangxi had gone down. Only Jiuying and another Black Rope elite were left. Jiuying's face was gloomy, and he said to the Black Rope elite, rush forward at the beginning, don't be afraid of death, and don't be afraid of getting hurt. Otherwise, if you are suppressed by the opponent, you will have no chance. The elite had dyed yellow hair, nodded, and went on stage with a big knife. On the single plank bridge, as the host said start, the yellow-haired rushed to Yang Lixi. Yang Lixi also continued to throw mystical arts at the opponent, and even used a black rope to wrap the opponent's feet, trying to pull him off the bridge. But all of these were broken by the yellow-haired man, and he saw that the opponent had already rushed to him. A trace of determination flashed in Yang Lixi's eyes. He shouted loudly and jumped up. He landed under the single plank bridge. The whole audience was silent. Zheng Cheo's cigar fell to his feet because he didn't hold it firmly. No one expected it. Yang Lixi was so aggressive that he jumped off the bridge himself. At this time, the host reacted and shouted, the winner is Tangxi Investment. On the bridge, the yellow-haired man was even more irritable. He rushed over all the way and was hit by many mystical arts. He just wanted to give Yang Lixi a knife. As a result, Yang Lixi went down by himself before he even touched his opponent. He immediately shouted, don't run, kid. Come up and we'll fight again. Yang Lixi snorted, turned around and left, not paying any attention to him. A real man can bend and stretch, and only a fool fights a battle he is not sure of. He returned to Luo Yan and exhaled, I'm so tired. Seeing that there was not a single bead of sweat on his face, Luo Yan did not believe his nonsense, but did not expose him. Picking up the dragon elephant, Luo Yan calmly walked to the single plank bridge. Huang Mao was asked by the host to return to his original position. Now, this Black Rope elite was panting and holding back his anger. Looking at Luo Yan, he raised his knife and said, boy, you'd better not run away later. Let me have some fun. Luo Yan ignored him and quietly pulled the dragon elephant out of the scabbard. Then he threw the scabbard under the bridge. The host looked at both sides and then shouted, start. Huang Mao roared and rushed up. Luo Yan slowly raised the dragon elephant. The Han sword was raised above his head. When Huang Mao rushed to his face, Luo Yan's eyes were stern. Yuan Li burst out. Boom. Even without using secret methods. As soon as the advanced first level Yuan Li was opened, the airflow exploded. The unique high heat breath of Yan Yangjing immediately shot towards the yellow-haired man. The yellow-haired man's hair flew, and his eyes changed. Then he saw the dragon elephant slashing down. In an instant, the dragon elephant turned into a red full moon. With an unstoppable momentum, it seemed to crush and destroy everything. It continued to grow in the yellow-haired man's vision. Combat skills. Full moon. The yellow-haired man was excited, and he shouted, turned around and jumped out of the single plank bridge. He fell to the ground. It was like a dream. Snap. The second cigar that Zheng Cheo had just held in his hand fell to his feet again. What is this? He looked at Jiuying and almost wanted to say, are you so useless? The word came to his lips, but he finally swallowed them. Jiuying clenched his fists and snapped. He glared at the yellow-haired man fiercely. Waste. The yellow-haired man wanted to cry, but had no tears. He thought to himself, I don't want to do this either. But the boy's sword power is too terrifying. Moreover, he is still in the advanced realm. I'm in the intermediate realm and I will fight with my head. Jiuying snorted and walked onto the single plank bridge. He didn't expect that all 4 of his men would lose. Originally, according to his idea, he was just going through the motions today and plundering the formation for his men, but he didn't think about really going on the field. But now, he has no choice. King Jiuying got general. Humph, let me see what you can do. Jiuying came to the single plank bridge. The host looked at Luo Yan. Is it okay? Luo Yan nodded. The host announced, begin. Facing Jiuying, Luo Yan did not show off. He directly used the secret method Koan wheel. Boom. The Yuan force exploded. Under the urging of the Koan wheel, the Yuan force of the Yan Yang Sutra with a high temperature breath suddenly erupted like a volcano. The scorching breath rushed to his face. The airflow lifted Jiuying's hair. Jiuying didn't expect that Luo Yan would use the secret method as soon as he arrived. Then, he saw the dragon elephant raised up and chopped fiercely. A red glow suddenly burst out from the sword tip. The glow was as thin as a cicada's wing and as fast as lightning. It rushed forward at a very fast speed. It gave Jiuying an extremely sharp and indestructible feeling. He instinctively jumped out of the single plank bridge and saw a red rainbow passing by the bridge in an instant. It broke through the wall. It was unknown how far away it was. This kind of power was no longer a fighting skill. Jiuying was sure that Luo Yan used a unique skill. It was actually a unique skill. The next second, Jiuying was on the ground, and only then did he realize that he had already stepped off the single plank bridge. Snap. The third cigar fell at Zheng Cheo's feet. He could hardly believe his eyes. Mr. Jiuying, whom he worshipped as a god, actually jumped off the bridge to surrender. How could he know that a long rainbow gave Jiuying an extremely dangerous feeling? Jiuying didn't want to fight with Luo Yan in such a place or get hurt. So he instinctively chose to avoid it without thinking about it. This is the most correct choice under normal circumstances. But now, it is a voluntary admission of defeat. Immediately, the host announced, the winner is Lihan Pharmaceutical. Since Tangxi Investment has 5 people, today's competition, Lihan Pharmaceutical wins. Lihan Pharmaceutical obtains the right to operate and use the Forbidden Land Cultivation Garden. In the afternoon, please invite the person in charge of Lihan Pharmaceutical to the King Jiuying Municipal Building to sign the contract. Hearing the host's announcement, Yang Like laughed and ran over to punch Luo Yan in the chest. Luo Yan, it has to be you. Luo Yan smiled and put the dragon elephant back into the sheath. In the blink of an eye, it was evening. Cheers. Yang Like held the wine glass in one hand and raised the contract in his hand with the other. Now, the Forbidden Land Cultivation Garden belongs to us. Next, we have to make good preparations. But tonight, let's drink. Drink. Hey, where is Luo Yan? Where did this guy go? Luo Yan did not attend the celebration banquet. He transformed into a red ghost and came to the old city. Red building. Luo Yan met Yukiashu in the quiet room before. What? The backbone of Huangquan is in the city? With Zheng Cheo, who is invested by Tangxi. Are you sure, Captain Shigi? Chapter 536 Killing 2 birds with one stone. Luo Yan was sure of it. He had used the Wuang Zuan to confirm Jiuying's identity. How could he be wrong? He nodded gently. Okay. Yukiashu stretched out her hand and lifted up the strands of long hair that fell in front of her eyes. A smile appeared on her red lips. Clean up these rats. Next, the interior of the red mansion was secretly boiling. Yukiashu mobilized her team members to prepare for tonight's cleaning work. The time was set for 2 hours later. Luo Yan asked Yukiashu for a quiet room. He practiced a little in the quiet room and adjusted his state. When the preset time came, Luo Yan finished his practice and stood up. He organized his belongings in an orderly manner. He drew out the blood drink, checked the blade, and put it back into the sheath. Then he put on a dark cloak and put on the wooden mask next to the long sword. He left the quiet room and came to the hall. There were already all female team members standing here. It seems that the main force of Team 1 is all women. That's the captain of the Red Devil of Team 7. Guess how old he is? Slut, stop being so naughty, I don't like you. How do you know if you haven't tried it? Among them, several women seemed to be quite interested in Luo Yan and frequently saluted him. Luo Yan looked at the 4 women, one of whom was a little older, and looked about the same age as Yukioshu. She was quite bright and generous, with a heavy chest and long legs. She was wearing a red dress, and leaning on a black spear. Seeing Luo Yan looking at her, she smiled gently. Above her head, Luo Yan saw the words Han Luan, 26 years old, elite of the first team of the Xuanming department. Next to her was a petite woman wearing a black short dress. She had short hair and a cold look. When she saw Luo Yan looking at her, she turned her face away and looked in other directions. There was a short knife behind her waist, and the aura was faint. It seemed that she should take the assassination route. Black Butterfly, 19 years old, elite of the first team of the Xuanming department. After scanning the information above her head, Luo Yan landed on a very lively girl. She had black hair and green eyes, and her long hair was braided into a long braid. She wore a white top and shorts, and her long legs were covered with white stockings, and even her short boots were white. She was holding a black long sword, and waved at Luo Yan with a smile. White Egret, 22 years old, an elite member of the first team of the Xuanming department. The last one was a girl wearing a green long dress. She had a standard oval face, a thin figure, and looked weak. But this weak woman was holding a guandao that was taller than her. Bluebird, 23 years old, an elite member of the first team of the Xuanming department. As Luo Yan was looking at them, a familiar voice rang out. Hey, the sisters of Team 1 have all gathered. I haven't seen such a grand occasion in many years. Luo Yan knew without looking back that Huang Yu had come. The captain who had been taught a lesson by Luo Yan now had one arm tied with a bandage and a board hanging on his chest. He walked over with a nonchalant look on his face. Seeing Luo Yan, Huang Yu's face suddenly fell. Why is the guy who dares not to see people here? Luo Yan did not look at him, but said lightly from the mask, don't you want your tongue anymore? Huang Yu was stunned. Then he understood. What Kai Jiuying meant was that last time he stretched out his hand to take off Kai Jiuying's mask, he ended up breaking his arm. If he talks nonsense again now, be careful not to pull out his tongue. If it was someone else, Huang Yu believed that the other party would not dare to do anything. But Kai Jiuying was too crazy and dared to take action at the captain's meeting. I guess he wouldn't care too much now. Although he was not angry in his heart, he still knew how to advance and retreat, and immediately shut his mouth. Over there, some of the female members of Team 1 laughed lightly, and some cast contemptuous eyes at Huang Yu. Among the elite members, Han Luan laughed and said, Captain Kai Jiuying is really humorous. The lively Bailu said without hesitation, I like Captain Kai Jiuying's personality. The other two, Black Butterfly and Bluebird, didn't say anything. But the former looked at Luo Yan a few more times, while the latter gently covered her face with her hands, her shoulders twitching slightly, as if she was laughing. Seeing that these women were all paying attention to Luo Yan, Huang Yu was even more angry. Red Luan, Bluebird, Black Butterfly, White Egret, Yukioshu's most trusted team member. Wait until the woman surnamed Yu is on the bed. You four can't escape either. Humph. These words of heart were clearly visible in Luo Yan's field of vision. Luo Yan couldn't help but wonder. How could Lin Yuanfang recruit such a guy who only thinks about his lower body? After thinking about it, perhaps only such a not so smart guy would be bribed by the surname Lin. At this time, a room opened deep in the hall. Yukioshu walked out. This little woman, her hair was tied up at this moment, fixed with a hair tie, so as not to affect her movements. She changed into a tight black tube top that covered her chest, revealing her flat belly and vest line. She wore a pair of loose wide leg pants with the trouser legs tied tightly, revealing her ankles. She was wearing black flat shoes and simple clothes, and was adjusting the black half-finger gloves on her hands. Are you ready? Yukioshu said loudly, with a faint smile on her lips. Han Luan and other women shouted, ready, Captain. Then, let's go. Yukioshu pointed at Luo Yan and said, Captain Shigi, you and I will share a car. The rest of the people will be assigned by themselves. She glanced at Huang Yu. Captain Huang, you don't want to go, right? Huang Yu laughed at this time. How can I be left out of such a good thing? Don't worry, I can take care of myself. Yukioshu nodded. Then you can solve the transportation problem yourself. After that, He stopped talking and left with Luo Yan. Looking at Luo Yan walking behind Yukiishu, Huang Yu's first grade steel teeth were almost broken. Chigi, I wonder how long you can be proud of yourself. He snorted, took out his mobile phone, and called for a car. The door of the red building garage opened, and cars rushed out of the garage one by one, along the streets of the old city, and rushed towards the city. In the car, Yukiishu put on the earphone. Listen. Huang Quan's people are hiding in the villa of Zheng Chao, the president of Tangxi Investment Company. Once we reach the destination, we will immediately carry out the decapitation operation. I will take care of Huang Quan's backbone. You can handle the rest. Make sure no one escapes from the villa. As for Zheng Chao, if you can capture him alive, then capture him alive. If you can't kill him, that's fine. Is everything clear? Soon, the team members responded one after another. Luo Yan held the blood drink and looked out the window. Tonight, it will be a bloody night. It's a good opportunity to strike at Tangxi Investment. In this way, even after he leaves, Zheng Chao will not have the energy to attack the cultivation garden. At the same time, he can get a contribution point in the Black Witch as a red ghost. It's really a good thing to kill two birds with one stone. Chapter 537 Bloody Night. In Zheng Chao's villa, Jiuying had just vented his anger on a woman and was sitting on the bed smoking. Today really pissed him off. He thought it was a sure thing, but he failed. In his mind, a young man with black hair and red eyes flashed. Jiuying snorted. God of King Jiuying. When I, Huang Quan, take over King Jiuying, I will crush you like an ant. At this time, the woman on the bed hugged Jiuying. Mr. Jiuying, what are you talking about? It's still early. I just know a fun game. Play with me. Jiuying raised the corner of his mouth and turned back to bed. It was late at night. Jiuying fell asleep. I don't know how long it took. Suddenly, there was a violent explosion. He opened his eyes suddenly, and at this moment, the window suddenly shattered, and a black object fell to the side of the bed. It turned out to be a grenade. Jiuying opened his eyes wide and jumped up from the bed. At the same time, he pulled the quilt and rolled the woman on the bed to the grenade. The poor woman didn't know what was happening yet. Suddenly, a flame appeared under her abdomen, and then she died in a violent explosion. Boom. The impact of the explosion still made Jiuying hit the wall, but he was not seriously injured. He quickly put on his clothes and looked out the window. Zheng Chao's villa was full of explosions, and people kept flashing in the dark night. Jiuying's face sank, and he was about to leave. At this moment, a figure flashed outside the window. Then someone came in through the window, landed on the carpet in the room. It was a woman. She was wearing a tube top and wide pants, half-finger gloves, and glanced at the corpse on the ground. She shook her head and said, "You are so cruel." Jiuying said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" The woman raised her head and smiled beautifully. Black Witch Zuanming Department, Yukiishu. Jiuying's heart was shocked. In the villa, the flames of the explosion flashed from time to time. Yukiishu's men, the elite led by Hangluan, have all sneaked in. Another part of the female team members were armed with rifles and surrounded the villa to prevent anyone from escaping. Luo Yan dodged and appeared in an open space. In the villa in front, Jiuying's confidants, Jiang Chao and the other two who had fought with him, and Yang Li on the single plank bridge in the morning, escaped. As soon as they came out, they saw Luo Yan wearing a wooden mask. They immediately knew that, if they didn't get past Luo Yan, it would be difficult to escape. The three exchanged glances. Two of them immediately rushed forward. Chen Si, who was seriously injured in the morning, fell behind a little. It was precisely because he fell behind that Chen Si saw clearly. The masked man opposite suddenly burst out a faint Yuanli-like blood mist. Then the cloak was raised. The knife light was like spring thunder, and it was thousands of miles away in an instant. He heard an extremely sharp whistle in the open space. The two companions in front were still rushing forward. There was an extremely faint light and shadow passing by them. Then the heads and arms of the two people were separated from their bodies. So fast. Chen Si's pupils shrank suddenly. He didn't even see the masked man's knife clearly. Two of his companions who were not weak in skills died. How to fight. In the cloak, blood drink pointed to the ground. A drop of blood dripped from the tip of the knife onto the grass. Luo Yan had a calm expression in the mask. Just now he used the combat skill chasing the wind and shadow. The essence of this combat skill lies in the word fast. It was so fast that 2 intermediate level cultivators lost their lives without even reacting. Kill 2 black rope elites. Luo Yan looked at Chen Si. Chen Si turned around and ran away when he saw that the situation was not right. Luo Yan raised his cloak again and blood drink flew into the air, emitting a faint blood-colored sword energy. The sword energy broke through the air. It caught up with Chen Si. Chen Si roared, turned around and chopped with a long sword. The sword energy was immediately chopped apart, but it also made his throat sweet and spurted out blood. He even flew into a small warehouse nearby. Luo Yan was not in a hurry. He walked slowly. He knew very well. Although the previous knife did not take Chen Si's life, but Chen Si couldn't get up again. This was true. Chen Si's hands and feet were weak now, and he barely got up. Suddenly he heard someone chuckle behind him. He looked back. A man had been standing in the warehouse. One arm was bandaged, with a bamboo board hanging on his chest. In his other hand, he held a knife. Now, the knife was across Chen Si's neck. I didn't expect it. I just wanted to watch the fun. I didn't expect to be able to pick up a bargain. The one I picked up was the bargain of that bastard Shiggy. After saying that, the long knife crossed Chen Si's neck. So when Luo Yan came in, he saw a large amount of blood spurting out of Chen Si's neck. Huang Yu stood behind him, wiping the knife. Luo Yan's eyes suddenly turned cold. That was his prey. Chen Si could no longer move and only had one breath left. But Huang Yu took away his credit. Huang Yu shouted exaggeratedly, "Captain Shiggy, why are you here?" He then looked at Chen Si. "Oh, this can't be your prey? Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I didn't expect him to be yours, Captain Shiggy. I thought he bumped in by himself. Captain Shiggy, you won't blame me, will you?" Luo Yan glanced at him. No response. Turning around, Huang Yu's mouth corners raised, thinking, "Even if I steal the credit in front of you, I don't think you dare to kill me." Just then, he saw Luo Yan's cloak raised. A blood-colored sword energy broke through the air from the cloak. Huang Yu jumped in shock, roared, and raised his long sword with all his strength. It hit the sword energy. There was a bang. The sword energy overflowed. Huang Yu did not die, but like Chen Si, he was hit and broke through the warehouse and fell to the ground. He rolled twice before stopping. The hand holding the knife was shaking. Blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. Like a ghost, he raised his head and roared, "Red Ghost, you dare to do it?" Luo Yan walked out of the gap in the warehouse. "I don't accept it. You can complain to me." Huang Yu almost vomited blood. Complain? Who to complain to? Yukiashu. That woman would only say lightly, "Harmony brings wealth." Luo Yan ignored him. If Yukiashu hadn't said that keeping this waste would still be useful, it would not be as simple as a sword. At this time, there was a rumble on the roof of the villa. Fragments flew everywhere. 2 figures jumped out of the villa, landed on the roof, confronting each other on the left and right. It was Yukiashu and Jiuying. Yukiashu looked calm and composed, but Jiuying was obviously injured. Luo Yan was not surprised by this situation. After all, he had seen Yukiashu's information. The woman's information was luxurious. Advanced 4th level. Secret methods, footwork, combat skills, and unique skills were all available. Also advanced level. Jiuying was far behind. Now, the villa has been surrounded. Jiuying could not fly. This was a good opportunity to see the strength of Yukiashu. Luo Yan floated back a little, stood with a knife in his hand, and looked at the roof. On the roof, Jiuying took a deep breath and practiced his skills. Flames rose up all around him and vaguely turned into fire snakes. Looking at Yukiashu again, she did not show any abnormality, and she had no weapons on her body. She smiled with her bare hands, and her figure flashed, and she rushed towards Jiuying. Luo Yan's pupils shrank slightly, and circles of fire appeared in his red eyes, and he said softly, "This." Huang Yu, who was lying on the ground, barely got up at this time. He didn't know what Luo Yan was sighing about, and snorted, "Nonsense." Chapter 538 Moon in the Water. On the roof of the villa, Jiuying was on high alert, not daring to relax. He stared at Yukiwayushu and saw the woman flash in front of him and punch him. Jiuying shouted and raised his elbow to hit. But when the elbow hit the front of Yukiwayushu's fist, Jiuying did not feel that he hit a real object. Then his cheek shook violently. He was suddenly punched on the left cheek. The punch was extremely heavy and it made Jiuying's eyes blurry. It seemed that he lost consciousness for a moment. The man spun like a top, spun a few times, and fell off the villa. In midair, Jiuying adjusted himself. He rolled in the air and landed like a toad. He raised his head. Then he saw Yukiwayushu flying over the roof. The figure kept flashing. There were after images in the air. Just when he was still trying to figure out which one was Yukiwayushu, a sharp whistle suddenly sounded above his head. Jiuying had no time to look up and immediately tilted his head. A heel hit his shoulder. The blow shook his whole body and he spat out a blood mist with a wow. Jiuying rolled his body violently and rolled away from the grass. After he had distanced himself, he saw Yukiwayushu standing where he was just now, retracting his legs and smiling. He rushed over again. After Jiuying rolled a few times, he bounced off the ground. He roared. He pushed his iron palm forward. Suddenly, 4 or 5 fire snakes jumped out. Yukiwayushu then moved his hands up and down, drawing a circle. 2 or 3 streams of water appeared out of thin air in the air and turned into a Teikai pattern. Jiuying's fire snakes hit the Teikai, being pulled, guided, and dispersed. Then Yukiwayushu's figure suddenly flashed and came to Jiuying's side. He stretched out his legs into a bow step. His left palm was facing the sky. His right hand was straight. He slapped Jiuying's chest with one palm. Bang! Jiuying was shocked. A stream of water vapor flashing with sparks spurted out from his back. The front end of the water vapor was extremely sharp, like a needle. Jiuying flew out in response to the palm strike, spitting blood repeatedly. Yukiwayushu clapped his hands and walked towards Jiuying with a smile. Not far away, Luo Yan's face behind the mask showed a rare surprise. So that's how it is. He opened the Wuang Zuan and finally saw Yukiwayushu's movements clearly. This woman can be said to have perfectly combined the divine treasure and the skills. Her divine treasure moon in the water. Luo Yan thought it was a water ability before. Now it seems that the water ability is true. But while controlling the water flow, it also has the effect of illusion. Just like the moon in the water, no matter how real the moon reflected in the water looks, it is always fake. Just now in the villa, Jiuying only thought that Yukiwayushu was attacking head on, but he didn't expect that the figure he saw, it was actually an illusion left by the moon in the water. It was the moon reflected in the water. The real Yukiwayushu attacked Jiuying from the side. He knocked Jiuying off the villa with one punch. In addition, flowing water can be hard or soft. When using the feminine characteristics of flowing water, you can cooperate with Yukiwayushu's skills, use the Teikai diagram to release force, and disperse force for defense. When using the masculine characteristics of flowing water, cooperate with the forging needle skill, to play a role in breaking defense and armor. No, not only that. In addition to being able to attack and defend, Yukiwayushu's Teikai forging needle skill also absorbs part of the power of the opponent's skills when using Teikai to control and disperse force. Then use the forging needle skill to fight together with your own power. In the cloak, Luo Yan gently tightened the blood drink in his hand. Yukiwayushu's ability is very comprehensive. Water control, illusion, force release, armor breaking, all aspects are covered. And this is only the cooperation between Shenzang and skills. She has not used the secret method of combat skills yet. In the field, Jiuying spit out another mouthful of blood. His mind is a little fuzzy, but there is one thought. It is still clear. Escape. I want to escape. His eyes revealed madness, and he slapped his hands on his chest. 2 flames immediately spurted out from behind him. After the 2 flames spurted out, Jiuying's momentum soared. It seemed that he used some secret method. The injuries in his body were temporarily suppressed by him, and his potential was also stimulated. Jiuying did not have the Wuang burning eyes, and did not see through Yukiwayushu's true and false. At the moment, he slapped his palms continuously, and slapped out palms burning with flames, constantly imprinting them towards Yukiwayushu. But that figure was just the moon in the water. It was not Yukiwayushu's real body at all. After Jiuying's outburst, he turned around and left without looking at the result. He suddenly jumped up, and 2 flames spurted out from behind, pushing Jiuying to jump to the top of the wall. At this moment, he heard a chuckle above his head. He couldn't help but look up. He saw a soul constantly expanding in his eyes. Yushu fell from the sky. 1 foot stepped on Jiuying's face. He stepped on Jiuying in midair. He stepped Jiuying's head into the grass. The man's body stood upside down. Yushu turned around gently. Another kick hit Jiuying in the chest. Bang! A puff of steam exploded from behind Jiuying. Jiuying was kicked by Yushu and kept rolling on the grass. He stumbled and finally stopped. Jiuying sat at the wall of the villa. There were countless grass leaves on his face and chest. Blood was flowing from his nostrils and mouth. He looked miserable. He trembled all over and barely stood up by holding the wall. Then he saw the fragrant wind surging in front of him. Yushu appeared silently. There was a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. One hand was like a knife. It suddenly stabbed out. The tip of the palm touched Jiuying's chest. As Yushu turned gracefully, her palm knife also passed across Jiuying's chest. It passed Jiuying's face. It fell in front of Yushu. The next second, a cloud of water vapor sprayed up, and along the trajectory of Yushu's palm knife, a circular wheel formed by water vapor was formed between her and Jiuying. Jiuying's pupils suddenly shrank into a point. Suddenly, the whole person rose up against the wall, and a long bloody strip was left on the wall where he passed. As Jiuying fell on the wall and fell at Yushu's feet, Luoyan saw that blood was still spurting from Jiuying's back. It turned out that Yushu's palm knife just now had torn Jiuying's back to the back of his head. It was all torn apart. He kicked Jiuying's head lightly. After Yushu confirmed that the other party was dead, he clapped his hands and walked towards Luoyan. At this time, a pig-killing voice sounded in the villa. "Spare my life. Everyone, please spare my life." It turned out to be Zhengchao, who was dragged out of the villa by the sickly and weak-looking King Nero. Along the way, Zhengchao's face was in close contact with the rough road surface and the relatively soft grass. He was dragged out with countless cuts, but it couldn't kill him. King Nero threw the guy to Yushu's feet, then covered his mouth and coughed twice, and stepped back a little. Zhengchao raised his head. Then he saw a foot falling. Yushu stepped on Zhengchao's face with 1 foot and put his hand on his leg. He bent down with a friendly smile. "Good evening, Mr. Zheng. Sorry to bother you so late at night. You won't mind, will you?" Luoyan looked at the villa that was almost razed to the ground and remained silent. Chapter 539. Frank Talk. In the end, regardless of whether Zhengchao was willing or not, he was taken away by Yushu. The team was withdrawn. In an instant, the people of the Black Witch left cleanly. It took only half an hour. The sirens did not sound until the people of the Black Witch left. The security guards from the nearby local security bureau finally arrived, although Yushu was very quick. However, the local security bureau did not show up until now, which inevitably made people speculate about the reason. The car was driving on the road back to the old city. Luoyan looked out the window. The vehicles of the local security bureau whizzed past. In a blink of an eye, they disappeared. He couldn't help but glance at Yushu. The latter said calmly, "Just now someone created some trouble to divert the attention of the local security bureau. As for whether it was true or not, only this woman herself knew." However, tonight, Yushu's skills left a deep impression on Luoyan. It also gave him some inspiration. Arrived at the Red Mansion, Zhengchao was taken away, and Yushu planned to interrogate him again tomorrow. At this time, she saw the injured Huang Yu. The woman raised her eyebrows. "Hey, Captain Huang. Are you injured? Why are you so careless?" Huang Yu's eyes flashed with anger, and he glanced at Luoyan, but he didn't dare to complain. "I was careless, and didn't dodge the sneak attack of that rat. But it doesn't matter. Captain Yu is thoughtful." Yushu nodded. She casually called a team member to take Huang Yu to heal his wounds. Then she said to Luoyan, "Captain Shigi, come with me." Walking into a quiet room, Yushu casually opened a cabinet and searched for something inside. "Tonight we were able to successfully hunt down a backbone of Huangquan and catch the big fish Zhengchao. Captain Shiggy, you have made a great contribution. I will report to the organization later, and you will definitely have to contribute some points. I also have something to give you here. Our battle with Huangquan is imminent. I hope you can make further progress. As she said that, she took out a dusty book. She blew a breath, raising a cloud of dust. Yukioshu pinched his nose and swept his hand over it. Then he threw the book to Luo Yan. Luo Yan took it. On the cover of the book were written the words Zengai days. He looked at Yukioshu. Yukioshu kicked off his shoes, lay on the couch, and said lazily, "This is not a great secret method, so you don't have to be polite. It's just that it should go well with your blood transformation sutra. It's said in a poem in the Song Dynasty's Baoing Dao's Han. The clouds are steaming in the Great Lake, and the dragons are fighting. There is no wind for 5 days. When this method is used, the surrounding space can be stuffy and unbearable. Your opponent's blood and energy will be forced out by this technique, and will leave the body unconsciously accompanied by a lot of sweat. If you practice the blood transformation sutra to the 3rd level, you can take the opponent's blood and energy from the air. Of course, practitioners are not affected, so you don't have to worry." Luo Yan nodded, and didn't bother to be polite with Yukioshu, and accepted the book that recorded the secret method. At this time, Yukioshu smiled and asked, "So, Mr. Qingyang God General, why are you going back to Guangling?" The temperature in the quiet room suddenly cooled down. "Qingyang God General." Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly in the mask. He was not aware. Yukioshu knew his identity as the Qingyang God General. After all, before he became the Qingyang God General, he had seen Yukioshu in his true form. And even though the facial features of the statue in the city were not clear, the charm was there. Yukioshu had lived in Qingyang for a long time, and Luo Yan would find it strange if she didn't know. What Luo Yan found strange was that Yukioshu had never mentioned this matter. Since this woman didn't mention it, Luo Yan was naturally happy to pretend to be confused. But now Yukioshu deliberately revealed it. What was the meaning? Was she going to report it to the upper level? Should I take her chance and assassinate her here? One thought after another, like lightning, it flashed through Luo Yan's mind. In the end, he decided to remain unchanged in the face of all changes. The reason for doing so was that Yukioshu proposed it at this time, which made him feel like being honest with himself. So, Luo Yan's cold voice rang out from the wooden mask. "Just these 2 days." Yukioshu's beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light. She said with a smile, "Don't worry, you are not in Qingyang. I will also keep an eye on your cultivation garden in the forbidden area. No one will bully you. Also, your secret. I will keep it for you. Who doesn't have a secret these days? I don't care what your purpose is in joining our Black Witch. As long as you can help me become a minister, none of this matters. Just consider it as a reward for you." Luo Yan narrowed his eyes slightly in the mask, and then said, "Not enough." "Oh." Yukioshu looked at Luo Yan with some expectation. "Then what else do you want?" Luo Yan did not directly say that he wanted the Golden Chamber record. He said lightly, "Let's talk about it when you become a minister." "Okay." Yukioshu shrugged her shoulders, "But it must be within my ability to pay. I won't do it if it's beyond my ability." Luo Yan nodded, then said goodbye and left. After someone sent Luo Yan out, Yukioshu sighed softly. "Am I really old? I thought that guy wanted to make some kind of request. Woman, no, I have to take care of myself." The next day, hotel. Luo Yan had just finished washing up when there was a loud knock on the door. He opened the door. Yang Lixi said excitedly, "Luo Yan, have you heard?" Luo Yan almost gave him a question mark face. He rushed in early in the morning and said something without a beginning or an end. How did he know what he was going to hear? Yang Lixi didn't keep him in suspense. He said directly, "Zheng Chao, who was invested by Tangxi, had his villa burned down last night. It seems that Zheng Chao himself is also missing." Yang Lixi laughed. "In this way, we don't have to worry about that Zheng guy causing trouble for us in the future." So it was this matter. As a participant in last night's incident, Luo Yan could only reply to Yang Lixi with a no. Yang Lixi's mouth twitched. "Is that your reaction? Can't you be happier?" Luo Yan gave him a happy expression. Forget it, forget it. Yang Lixi waved his hand. You don't have to be perfunctory with me. Let's go and have breakfast. Luo Yan nodded. I'll leave in the morning. Okay, I'll get you a car. You drive back by yourself? Luo Yan naturally had no problem driving back to Guangling by himself. So the matter was settled. After breakfast, Luo Yang packed up his things and separated from Yang Lixi. He drove away from Qingyang alone. Luo Yan seriously thought about Yukiishu's attitude. Obviously, Yukiishu wanted to keep a secret for him, otherwise he would have been exposed long ago. And she was willing to do so. Luo Yan felt that there were two reasons. One was the style of the Black Witch, which only cared about results and was not afraid of infiltration by foreign enemies. The second was that he was useful to Yukiishu, which was far more important than the former. Chapter 540 Drug Resistance. A few days later, Luo Yan returned to Guangling. His life went back to the original track. He practiced the technique during the day and the secret technique or combat skills in the afternoon. A week passed like this. On this day, Luo Yan was practicing the Yan Yangjing. He visualized the scorching sun at noon, and visualized the beams of sunlight falling on his body and entering the acupoints one by one. He had been practicing the Yan Yangjing for some time. At this time, the acupoints in his body were glowing one by one. Only a few acupoints were still dim. But as the Yuan force continued to flow into his body and operated according to the technique, those acupoints gradually lit up. Finally, all the acupoints in Luo Yan's body shone brightly. The light they emitted eventually connected into one, and around Luo Yan's body, it turned into a faint halo. Luo Yan did not stop or directly advance because of this. He felt that he was still far from the bottleneck. So he continued to absorb the Yuan force. Continued. As the technique was running, the temperature in the training hall gradually rose. The circle of halo around Luo Yan first shone 1 inch, and then reached 3 inches in a blink of an eye. After a while, it expanded to 1 foot. Luo Yan's halo continued to expand, and the heat continued to rise. From 1 foot to 3 feet, then to 10 feet, 3 feet, 10 feet. The foundation laid by viewing mountains and seas made Luo Yan's body, from the inside out, extremely tough. This also made him more able to withstand the pressure of the expanding halo than those who practiced other techniques. At this time, he was already sweating profusely, but he was still able to hold on. So the halo soon expanded to half of the training hall. Until then, Luo Yan felt that his body had expanded and had accommodated a lot of more Yuanli. So he followed the instructions of Yan Yangjing. Break through the realm and upgrade. Boom. The halo began to shrink and expand violently, and in the process, it shrank a little bit. But every inch it shrank, the halo became brighter. When the halo shrank to only 10 feet wide, the whole halo was dazzling, like a golden sun shaking. Luo Yan also followed with a tremor, only to feel that the invisible barrier in his body was broken. Then a stream of heat spread in all directions, flowing through his body. It made him feel as if he was soaking in a hot spring, warm all over, indescribably comfortable. Luo Yan knew that he had broken through his original realm. Now, his Yan Yangjing has entered the advanced second level. Slowly finishing the exercise, Luo Yan opened his eyes and saw that there was still a circle of faint but dazzling light on his body. He casually swung a punch. 3-foot golden light suddenly spurted out from the tip of the fist, and the heat surged, causing wisps of green smoke to rise in the air. After the Yan Yangjing entered the second level, any attack would cause a halo phenomenon. The halo has the effects of impact and high temperature. When the exercise is running, the larger the range of the halo and the higher the brightness, the stronger the power of the golden light. That's why Luo Yan didn't rush to break through just now, but first expanded the halo to the limit, then tempered it, and finally chose to break through. He exhaled softly. Seeing that he was sweating, he planned to take a shower. At this moment, he suddenly lost his mind. Then his body convulsed violently, and indescribable pain hit his nerves. Luo Yan groaned, and fell to the ground, bending like a shrimp. His skin quickly turned red, and his eyes seemed to be flowing with blood. The secondary infection of red venom suddenly broke out. Luo Yan clenched his steel teeth, and looked at a school bag not far away. There were some sundries and a bottle of super relief agent in it. Luo Yan growled, Fighting against the severe pain of the red venom attack, his teeth broke his lips, and a few drops of blood came out. He struggled to crawl to the school bag, and took out the super relief agent inside. Then he injected himself. After the medicine was pushed into the body, the indescribable pain gradually subsided. After a while, the red venom was suppressed again. But Luo Yan no longer had the strength to move a finger. He gasped and looked at the ceiling of the training hall. With a splitting headache, he didn't think about any problems for the time being. After a quarter of an hour, Luo Yan barely sat up. He looked at the empty bottle on the ground. It's been less than 3 months since the last injection of the reliever. So it seems that the time of the red venom attack has been advanced. At least a week earlier. Is it because of drug resistance? Originally, because of the super reliever, Luo Yan almost forgot that he was infected again. But now, he experienced the pain of fighting the red venom attack on the surface with only painkillers. Every time it attacked, he was in excruciating pain. Every time it happened, it was a test of his will. Now, the pain just now was reminding him again. The god of death has not left. Death is still chasing him from behind. Luo Yan clenched his fists. When the red venom attacks once a month, I have to take the risk of injecting Mr. Shi's barrier. After making a decision, Luo Yan stood up. He said to himself, I have come this far. I can't be easily defeated by the red venom. Go forward. Keep going. Only by running faster can you survive. Luo Yan left the training hall. He planned to exchange the energy enhancer from the giant beast strategic mansion in the afternoon. Contribution points are wasted. Don't consider other things to exchange now. Use them all to exchange for cultivation resources. Only when you are alive can there be the next story. Only when you are alive can you be qualified to consider other things. Otherwise, everything is empty talk. Afternoon. After exchanging a batch of energy enhancers, Wen Feng informed him that Zeng was waiting for him in the training hall. Luo Yan came and saw Zeng practicing with a training longsword. Seeing Luo Yan, he smiled, but did not let Luo Yan practice with him like last time. Putting the training longsword back on the weapon rack, Zeng said, from your appearance, have you made a breakthrough? Luo Yan nodded. Just broke through this morning. He then told Zeng about Yuqiushu's revelation of his identity and his guess about Yuqiushu's attitude. After listening carefully, Zeng said, I agree with your idea. You should still be useful to that woman. That's why I didn't expose you. But you can't trust her completely. Maybe she will break up with you soon. You have to be careful. Don't force yourself. If you feel dangerous and want to withdraw from this operation, tell me at any time and I will explain the situation to the giant beast strategic office. Or, Zeng suddenly laughed. Luo Yan looked at him in confusion. Zeng patted his shoulder and said, usually, if you want a woman not to betray you, you just need to make her yours. Luo Yan frowned and said, I guess the so-called becoming my person should not mean making her my subordinate, right? Zeng laughed. Are you not as stupid as you seem? Luo Yan thought seriously and said, she is older than me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 541 Little Peach. Seeing that Luo Yan seemed to be thinking seriously, Zeng couldn't help laughing, pressed his shoulder and said, okay, let's think about this later. About the matter of Wan Zitang. These days, I have discussed it with a few old friends. Then, I have some ideas. In the evening, Luo Yan came to the old city alone. In the quiet room of Jude building, he met Wenzhao. The fake Taoist priest reported the recent situation to Luo Yan. Master, according to your instructions, Miss Yang Tao has been sent to the coyote camp. Yang Heo's people have also gone to the camp. I have told the mad dog to watch Miss Yang Tao. Luo Yan nodded. Wenzhao continued. In addition, I have purchased 2 old model mechs from Dark Blood. In the next few days, they will deliver parts to the camp for assembly. Dark Blood has provided a maintenance team, and I have paid for 3 months of expenses. Leo Guan also purchased a mecha simulator with Mr. Chen. It should also be delivered to the coyote camp in the next few days. I have also selected a group of members with good cultural level from our main team. As the first batch of mecha trainees, here is the list and information. Please take a look. Wen Zhao handed over a tablet. Luo Yang browsed it and thought there was nothing wrong, so he nodded in approval. Then he said, "What's going on with 1ZHI Tang recently?" Wen Zhao's face fell when he heard the word 1ZHI Tang. "It's still the same, sir. They have been very arrogant recently. They sent people to ask us if we have any goods to ship. They said that they will take as much as we ship." Luo Yan's eyes shrank slightly in the mask. He said calmly, "Then let them do as they say. Sell out the herbs we have in batches. Let them eat them." Wen Zhao was stunned and looked at Luo Yan. "Master, if we really do this, then the entire market will be monopolized by Wan Zitang. It doesn't matter." Luo Yan said in a deep voice. "In addition, you continue to purchase herbs from outside. Take as many as you can. After you get them, sell them out. I want Wan Zitang to die." Wen Zhao seemed to understand something from Luo Yan's eyes, nodding. "Going down to do things." Luo Yan stood up and said, "Notify Jiuying to go to the camp with me tomorrow. Mr. Chen is going to open a school. I have to go and take a look." Wen Zhao quickly agreed. It was the same night. In the wilderness, winter has passed. Spring is here. Even in the north, the night is not necessarily that cold. This made Yang Tao, who was wearing a relatively thin black combat uniform, not feel cold. At this time, she was lying on a cold rock, using the secret method opening the ghost wheel. The whole person restrained his breath, climbing slowly in the darkness. After a while, she heard voices from under the rock. "What the hell is Wang Dong doing? He's been drinking for a long time. Is he going to make out with some girl? Come on." With Wang Dong's appearance, only a blind man would like him. There were two men under the rock, sitting next to a bonfire. They were dressed normally, with pistols and rifles beside them. Yang Tao pulled up a black mask to cover the area below the eyes. Without making any sound, she landed lightly behind one of them, while the other's companion turned around and didn't know what to take out. Yang Tao suddenly attacked, covering the target's mouth with one hand. With the other hand, she took out a poisoned dagger, slashed the prey's throat horizontally. Then she rolled lightly. She came behind the other man. The man took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took out a cigarette from it, and was about to pass it to his companion. Then he saw his companion covering his throat, his eyes wide open, and fell down with black lips. At this moment, a small hand reached out from behind him. Following the same method, Yang Tao killed the man. After killing two people in a row, Yang Tao's face turned pale. She felt uncomfortable in her stomach. Her head was still a little dizzy. She pulled down her mask and took a few breaths of the night air. It was better. Then she said with the in-ear communicator, "Mr. Yang, I have completed the task." Yang Heo's somewhat crazy laughter sounded in the headset. Good job, Xiao Taozi. There is nothing for you to do next. Stay there." Yang Tao nodded, then hid in the dark and paid attention to the surroundings. A moment later, a camp in the distance suddenly exploded. Then the flames shot up into the sky. Then the explosions, exclamations, and curses were heard. But these sounds stopped not long after. That meant that Yang Heo had taken over the survivors' camp not far from the coyote camp. "It's okay, Xiao Taozi. Come in." After receiving Yang Heo's information, Yang Tao came to the camp. The leader of the camp had been executed, and the remaining soldiers surrendered or died in battle. Yang Heo did not make things difficult for the residents of the camp, but just controlled them. Then he asked some of his men to count the camp's warehouses and prepare to wait until daytime to put all the confiscated materials and residents back to the coyote camp. When Yang Heo was looking at a list of materials in the camp, he heard a subordinate next to him whistle. Then he said, "Xiao Taozi is really good." Yang Heo said with a smile, "Really?" The subordinate had just made a contribution and was a little too proud of himself. He said, "Of course, look at that little butt." "Ah!" he screamed before he finished speaking. It was because Yang Heo cut his face. Yang Heo smiled and came over, put his hand on the shoulder of the subordinate, and said with a smile on his face, "Xiao Taozi is Mr. Chiga's student. Mr. Chigi trusted me and handed her over to me. I'm very afraid of Mr. Chigi, so you'd better not have those thoughts about Zyro Teozi. Otherwise, I don't mind letting you taste my tormenting skills. The subordinate's face was bloody. Hearing this, he said palely, Brother Yang, I'm talking nonsense. Don't take it to heart. It's better if you really are talking nonsense. Yang Heo pinched the chin of this subordinate with a mechanical prosthesis, and a smile was drawn on his face. Otherwise, I will have experimental materials. After a snort, Yang Heo let go. In the morning, Yang Heo escorted the camp supplies and personnel back to the camp. Yang Tao had a new mission again. This time she separated from the other people and explored the way ahead of the team. This time Yang Tao changed into camouflaged uniforms and masks, walking among flowers, plants, and trees. Unless the distance is very close, it is difficult to distinguish her. As she rested on the crown of an old tree, she suddenly saw a cloud of dust rising from the wilderness in the distance. Yang Tao quickly took out her binoculars and looked over. She saw a convoy passing by in the distance. Judging from the route they were taking, they seemed to be heading for the coyote camp. Chapter 542 Preparation for Battle. Seeing the convoy, Yang Tao was startled at first, then calmed down. While observing, she contacted Yang Heo. What's wrong, little Teozi? Yang Heo was eating an apple in the car. People who knew him knew that Yang Heo didn't recognize his relatives. The reason why he was so approachable to Yang Tao, who was also from the old Yang family, was entirely because of the relationship with Chigi. Yang Tao's voice rang in the communicator. I saw a convoy. Judging from the vibrations from the ground, there was at least one tank in it. Judging from the speed of the smoke and dust, the convoy's speed was limited, probably only about 20 kilometers. The problem is, they seem to be heading for the coyote camp. If it was just a convoy, Yang Heo would think that this little guy was making a fuss. After all, this is on the surface. It's normal to have a convoy. Which camp or base doesn't have a few cars? But there are tanks in it, which is not simple. Tanks are not something that anyone can get at any camp or base. This is a military product. If you are not a big force, you can't get a tank at all. The base that can get the tanks must be at least to the level near the forbidden area. But there is no similar base nearby. Got it? I'll notify you now. Try to find out the composition of that convoy. On the treetops, Yang Tao said okay, and put away the telescope. Then he used the secret method, opened the ghost wheel to restrain his breath, and chased after the convoy under the cover of flowers, plants, and trees. The convoy was not moving fast. Yang Tao caught up quickly. She knew that she was a novice, and did not dare to chase too close to avoid being discovered by the people in the convoy. Even so, Yang Tao quickly figured out the composition of the convoy. There were not many vehicles in the convoy. There was an old camouflaged tank in front and behind, and a soldier sat on each tank. The soldiers would pick up the telescope from time to time to observe the surroundings and scout the situation nearby. This made Yang Tao, who was hiding in the bushes, hide herself deeper. There were 2 tanks in front and behind, and several heavy trucks in the middle. Looking into the truck compartment, it was full of soldiers. Some of the soldiers were chatting, while others were checking their guns. Yang Tao estimated that there were at least 100 soldiers in these heavy trucks. Finally, there were several modified mountain off-road vehicles. Each of these most common vehicles on the ground was equipped with an anti-aircraft machine gun. This powerful and fast-firing weapon was a nightmare for infantry. These vehicles and soldiers had no obvious signs. It was unknown which faction they belonged to, but their route was very clear, heading for the coyote camp. If it were the previous coyote camp, it might have been a headache facing this convoy. But now the camp has been vigorously developed with the support of the Red Gate. Both manpower and hardware facilities have been greatly improved. In particular, in order to prevent the revenge of the Yellow Spring, the camp has set up many traps and minefields in the outer area in the past few months to improve its defense. Facing such a convoy, the coyote camp can still win the battle. The problem is, who knows if there are other convoys behind. Yang Tao lay in the bushes without moving, and she crawled out after the convoy went far away. The girl with grass on her face quickly contacted Yang Heo and reported her discovery. Coyote camp. Liu and Liuc walked quickly across the square. Liuc, with short hair and a rifle on his shoulder, said as he walked. According to the information provided by Yang Heo, the convoy should arrive at our camp in about 2 hours. Liu said grimly. 2 tanks, more than 100 soldiers, and 3 or 5 off-road vehicles. This convoy is not our opponent yet. What I'm worried about is that this convoy is just the vanguard. There are main forces behind, which will be troublesome. Liu followed closely behind him and said, are you worried that this is the people from Huangquan? Besides them, I can't think of any other possibilities. We have destroyed these nearby camps, and we have taken over them. They have no ability to resist us at all. So, it can only be Huangquan. As Liu spoke, he had already walked into a warehouse. This is the mecha warehouse, where 2 old model mechs carried out by Dark Blood from the underground city are being assembled. At present, only the legs have been assembled. Liu found the head of the mecha maintenance team. They were transferred from Dark Blood and were temporarily employed by the Coyote camp. In addition to being responsible for the assembly of the mecha, they were also responsible for the subsequent maintenance issues. Engineer Zhao, how long will it take to assemble the mecha? Liu asked quickly after coming in. The mecha maintenance team leader Zhao Ziyang, a mecha engineer, was sitting on a chair and smoking. Hearing Liu's voice, he quickly responded. It's too early. We have only assembled the legs now. It will take at least a few days to assemble everything. Then there will be debugging and inspection. It will take at least 2 weeks to drive the mecha. Why, we have to drive it now. Didn't you say that Mr. Chen will start formal teaching in a few days? If you start training as a novice, you shouldn't be able to drive a mecha without 3 to 5 months, right? Liu shook his head. It's none of Mr. Chen's business. I'm worried that there will be a battle in the camp next. I was thinking that, if the mecha can be assembled as soon as possible, it can become a combat force. Zhao Ziyang was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. That won't work. It will definitely not be done in these few days. Even if I take my brothers to work day and night, it will take at least a week. Liu looked into the depths of the warehouse and said, as soon as possible, I'll think of another way. Zhao Ziyang threw away his cigarette butt and said, what's the matter? Something big happened? It's possible. But you don't have to worry too much. Mr. Chigi has come to our camp. He should be fine. Liu comforted him with a few words, then walked out of the warehouse with Liu. Liu said, I have informed Mr. Chigi. He is on his way. He will arrive tomorrow at the earliest. Liu nodded. So today, we can only rely on ourselves. Notify Yang Heo and ask them to come back as soon as possible. Those materials and camp residents, if you can't bring them back, just throw them away for the time being. Otherwise, the camp will be gone, and those people and things will be useless. Liu nodded, took out the communicator, and began to call Yang Heo. Liu went to mobilize the soldiers in the camp and notify the Iron Horse mercenaries stationed in the camp. The Coyote camp began to get busy. It was like a precision machine. As the parts began to operate one by one, the machine entered the working state. 2 hours later, Liu stood in the camp's fortifications and could already see the smoke and dust rising from the wilderness ahead, and the deep muzzle of the camouflage tank at the front of the convoy. Chapter 543. Once the arrow is shot, there is no turning back. The smoke gradually lowered. That was because the convoy outside the camp had stopped. 2 tanks drove up to the front, with their gun barrels pointed at the Coyote camp. More than 100 soldiers got off the trucks behind them and came behind the tanks. These soldiers were well equipped and had ruddy faces. It was obvious that their food should be quite good. Coupled with the anti-aircraft machine guns on the off-road vehicles behind, this convoy was worthy of the comment of strong soldiers and strong horses. At this time, a soldier climbed onto the tank, picked up a loudspeaker, and began to shout, listen, everyone inside, we are the Huangquan organization, Mr. Luo's direct guard. Now we announce that the Coyote camp will be taken over by Huangquan and Mr. Luo. You are required to leave the camp and surrender immediately. The camp facilities must be kept intact, otherwise you will bear the consequences. The soldier repeated the shouting, threatening the Coyote camp. Liu looked at Liu, who made a gesture, and Liu nodded and left. Then, Liu took a loudspeaker and shouted in the bunker, did you make a mistake? We, the Coyote Camp, are the agents of Mr. Jiuying, the Huangquan. We also cooperated with Mr. Jiuying last year. We are all family. Don't let the flood wash away the Dragon King Temple. Liu did not rush to tear his face with Huangquan, but used words to delay time. At the same time, Liu led several camp soldiers and climbed down from a sewer in trance. These soldiers were carrying packages with high explosives on their backs. They followed Liu to the sewer. The sewer here was cleaned by the Coyote Camp. Therefore, except for a little more dust in the sewer, everything else is very clean. The reason for the laborious cleaning is to open up the sewer and use it as a tunnel. Now, Liu and his party have come to the bottom of the convoy using the sewer network. On the ground, the soldiers of Huangquan continued to shout, Jiuying is no longer a member of our Huangquan, so all his previous promises are invalid. Mr. Liu has the final say here now. I advise you not to talk nonsense and surrender quickly. Otherwise, we will use force to flatten this place. For the people of Huangquan, a mere surface camp was not taken seriously by them. So when the soldiers said this, they seemed full of energy. Liu implemented the delaying tactics. In this case, please let me talk to Mr. Liu. I need to know Mr. Liu's attitude. A burst of laughter rang out in the Huangquan convoy. The soldiers on the tank did not laugh, but said seriously, Mr. Liu will arrive in the evening, and is not in the convoy now. In addition, you are not qualified to negotiate with Mr. Liu. Our patience is almost at its limit. Now I give you 3 minutes. If you don't surrender in 3 minutes, we will attack the camp. At this time, under a tank, a manhole cover shook and then opened. A soldier from the camp came out from it. They stuffed the package of high explosives into the tracks of the tank and under the belly of the tank, and then returned the same way. The other tank was also the same. Unknowingly, the explosives were already stuffed under the 2 tanks. In the sewer, Liu immediately reported the situation to Liu. After Liu understood it, he picked up a communicator and said, prepare for battle. As soon as the tank on the opposite side is blown up, we will start. A response sounded in the communicator. Take a deep breath. Liu knew that once the arrow is shot, there is no turning back. Once the battle starts, there will be no room for turning back. He clenched his fists, then picked up the communicator and said, Liu, start. In the sewer system, Liu, who was already far away, took out a remote control, pressed it hard. On the ground, in the Huangquan convoy, a commander was reporting with a communicator. Yes, Mr. Liu. We have arrived at the Coyote Camp. We are now ordering them to surrender. Please rest assured. How can a small camp fly into the sky? Do you dare to fight back? Just as the voice fell, there was a loud rumble in front. The bottom of the 2 tanks in front of the convoy suddenly erupted with raging flames. Amid the roar, the body of the tank shook violently in the strong explosion. The track was blown off and splashed all around. The surrounding ground was full of cracks, and then countless gravel sprayed out, like bullets, smashing some soldiers behind, and causing them to bleed. The commander on the off-road vehicle was directly shaken off the vehicle, and fell to the ground. A voice shouted in the communication machine, what happened? The commander quickly replied, Mr. Liu, they blew up our tank. What? Hit them. Hit them hard. The commander quickly got up and shouted, attack. Attack. He was responded by the whistling sound of rocket launcher shells. 2 black spots broke through the air from the left and right sides of the convoy, from different directions. He fell into the soldiers of Huangquan. As soon as the commander got up, he saw 2 fireballs rising in front of him. The impact of the violent explosion then threw the commander away. He was hit so hard that he saw stars. After shaking his head violently, he became a little more sober. At this time, corpses fell beside him. The soldiers of Huangquan did not react in time and were killed by rocket launchers. Until then, the soldiers of the Coyote Camp rushed out from various fortifications and shelters. While the soldiers of Huangquan were dizzy after being attacked twice, the soldiers of the camp quickly harvested their lives. Liu also came out of the sewer with several soldiers and surrounded them from behind, making the people of Huangquan attacked from the front and back. The commander covered his head and rolled under the belly of an off-road vehicle. Looking out from under the car, there were whistling flames everywhere. That was the light emitted by the friction of bullets in the air. Wherever they passed, blood-colored flowers would always bloom first. The commander was stunned. It was totally unbelievable that this was the strength of a survivor camp. In his impression, for a survivor camp like this, it was already amazing if a camp could gather 10 rifles. After all, before the giant beast disaster occurred, the circulation of firearms was prohibited in this land. So even if the order collapsed, it was rare to see a large number of guns in ordinary camps. But now, the Coyote camp not only has guns, but also rocket launchers. If there are tanks and mechs, it would be the configuration of a surface base. The commander immediately thought of one thing. He had to send this information out. Just as he picked up the communicator to report, he suddenly heard a sharp whistle, and then a shell fell next to the off-road vehicle. It's over. As soon as the commander said this, the shell exploded, and the raging flames that followed occupied his field of vision. Chapter 544. Crazy. Half an hour after the battle, another convoy arrived. However, this was Yang Heo's convoy. He followed Liu's advice and left all the supplies and residents in the camp behind. He only brought his own people and rushed back. When he arrived outside the camp, Yang Tao jumped out of the car. He saw the soldiers of the Coyote camp carrying away the bodies and throwing them onto the trucks. The bodies were lucky enough to remain intact. The unlucky ones either had their hands and feet blown off or were blown in half. When they were being carried, things kept falling out of the stomachs of the bodies that were left in one piece. Yang Tao looked pale and then ran to a deserted place, squatted on the ground and retched. This is war. It has never been tender and has nothing to do with anything beautiful. It is cruel and bloody. Yang Heo also got out of the car, glanced at Yang Tao, and ignored the little girl. He found Liu. Liu was counting the war damage. When he saw Yang Heo, he nodded. That's right, you guys wiped them out. I was worried that I would have to come back to collect your bodies. Yang Heo never said nice things. He said whatever he thought and did whatever he thought. He never thought about the consequences and the overall situation. Liu had been with him for a while and had gotten used to it. He didn't like Yang Heo. Liu was logical, cautious and orderly in his work. He was just the opposite of Yang Heo. But he had to admit that he felt a little more at ease when Yang Heo came. Anyway, Yang Heo, this mad dog, was not weak in combat. With him around, the camp would be a little safer. They are from Huangquan, and they claim to be the direct guard of Luou. If I'm not mistaken, the man named Luo should be from the same class as Jiuying before. According to the information they provided, this convoy is just the vanguard, their main force, and that Mr. Luo will not arrive until the evening. Liu looked at the sky. In other words, we have about 5 or 6 hours to prepare. Prepare for what? Prepare to die. Yang Heo said with a smile. I heard from Mr. Chigi that the man named Jiuying is at a high level. In other words, the man named Luo should be about the same. I'm no match for him. So otherwise, let's run away quickly. A wise man never suffers a loss in front of him. Liu's face suddenly fell. Run? How? There are so many people in the camp, there is no time to move them. Besides, the 2 dark blood mechs have just been delivered. You should know how much they are worth without me telling you. Do you think you can move the mechs? If we leave them behind, will you be responsible for the losses or me? But, Liu said, you reminded me. No matter what, we have to move Mr. Chenefei. Liuc, I'll leave this to you. Liuc, whose short hair reached her shoulders, changed her expression and said, such a small matter as moving can be handed over to others. I'll stay and fight this battle with you. Yang Heo smiled and said, how touching. How about this? Let me take care of such a small matter as moving Mr. Chen. Liu glanced at him. Yang Heo shrugged and said, okay, I'm kidding. Liu then said to Liuc, Mr. Chen is very important. I don't feel safe if I leave him to other people. Liuc looked at Liu and nodded. Okay, I'll be back as soon as possible. She turned and left. Yang Heo whistled and said, can't you just make things clear? It makes me uncomfortable. Liu spread out a map and said, you don't have to be uncomfortable. You also have work to do. About 200 kilometers southeast of our camp, there is a town where a giant beast is lurking. Yang Heo was stunned for a moment, then laughed. They all say I'm a lunatic, but I think you are the one. You want to attract the giant beast. You want me to attract the giant beast. That will cost me my life. Liu looked at him and said, that depends on whether you want to face the advanced realm, or want to be bait, to lure the giant beast over. Choose one yourself. Yang Heo said with a smile, if I could choose myself, I would definitely choose to run away halfway. Liu closed his eyes slightly. Yang Heo said again, but I'm afraid of being hunted by Mr. Chiggy, so forget it. I'll go and lure the giant beast. I hope I won't become its excrement. However, how can I lure the giant beast here? I don't think it will be obedient. Liu smiled. Before, Chiggy was worried that the camp would be attacked by the giant beast, so he gave us some giant beast attractant. Yang Heo nodded. I understand. He pointed to Yang Tao outside. So, Mr. Chiggy's students are in your hands. Liu nodded. Yang Heo walked out and called, little Tao, come here. Yang Tao had stopped vomiting, but her face was still a little pale. Hearing what he said, he came. Yang Heo smiled and said, I'm going out to carry out a mission. From now on, you listen to Liu. Yang Tao nodded. Mr. Yang, you have to be careful. Don't worry, the fortune teller said I can live to 99. Yang Heo waved his hand and left. Yang Tao came to Liu. Glancing at the little girl, Liu said, Miss Yang, I have a mission for you. Just call me Taozi. Yang Tao smiled. Okay, Taozi. Liu drew a circle on the map. I need you to go for reconnaissance. If you find anyone from Huangquan, notify me immediately. Also, when a battle breaks out in the camp, don't approach the camp unless I order you to. If the camp falls, return to the underground city immediately. You know the way back, right? Yang Tao nodded. Liu smiled. Then, let's do it. Yang Tao trotted away. Liu exhaled at this time. We have done everything we can. The rest is up to fate. He put away the map, walked out of the room, and shouted, call all the men in the camp, open the warehouse for me, and bring me all the guns and ammunition. Move quickly. The enemy may arrive early. Asterisk 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 south of the coyote camp, on the road more than 200 kilometers away, a convoy was moving. This convoy has 8 tanks, 10 trucks and 12 off-road vehicles. Among them, there is also a wheeled armored command vehicle. In the command vehicle, a man put down the communicator with a gloomy face. He was wearing a neat combat uniform, short hair, and his face was covered with a layer of frost. The slightly neutral face exuded a chill. At this moment, his eyes flashed with murderous intent. In the command vehicle, a communications soldier turned around and said, Mr. Luo, we have completely lost contact with the vanguard. The man whose full name is Luo snorted. I knew that Jiuying disappeared for no reason, and there must be something wrong. Jiuying disappeared in the coyote camp. This camp is indeed not simple. Full speed ahead. Before nightfall, I want that camp to be a thing of the past. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.